Chapter 381, The Director is Coming. Dong Tanping apologized, but he himself didn't think too much. He knew what his own nephew was like and guessed what had happened after hearing others' words. If he were not there, it would be simple and he wouldn't care about it. However, he was present and that was Mr. Zhang's younger sister, so he had no other choice but to apologize in person. He felt helpless deep inside, but that was the law of the jungle, he had to accept it. Xuanhuan was a little shocked by his apology and found it unexpected. Liang Hao also felt the same. After all, it could be seen that as an influential man, his attitude seemed to have explained everything. Her brother, and also the man my sister likes, seems to be somebody. Liang Hao was lost in thought. Liang Mengkai blinked her eyes and looked around with curiosity. Zhang Li did not say anything. After seeing the situation, Dong Tanping thought for a moment and said, "If you feel unsatisfied, you can dispose of Dong Hongda as you like." Dong Hongda was frightened. He thought that he asked his uncle to help him, but it seemed that he'd suffer more because of him. So, he looked very bitter and wanted to cry, but there were no tears. "Forget it, just don't bother us again." Zhang Li waved her hand while speaking and didn't use the opportunity to punish him. "Okay," Dong Tanping nodded and said, "then I'm leaving." After saying that, he frowned and stared at Dong Hongda. Then, he took the lead and left. Dong Hongda and the others followed behind and left with disappointment. "You two, keep watch here. Don't let others bother Ms. Zhang." Shan Hao told two men behind him, and then looked at Zhang Li while saying with a smile, "Please enjoy yourselves. Call them if something happens." Then, he also left. All the people around were shocked, and the matter was finally over because of their fear of a name. "Wow, I didn't know that your brother is so powerful." Liang Mengkai's eyes lit up and she looked at Zhang Li while speaking smilingly. "Anyway, it has nothing to do with you. Don't be so excited." Zhang Li rolled her eyes and said, "How can you be like this? Can't I say something?" Liang Mengkai snorted and then said, "Let's continue, drink more. This cool beer is not as terrible as I thought." Zhang Li looked at her watch and then said, "It's 11:40. I have to go back. There is still one at 12 o'clock. "Do you mean DJ?" Liang Mengkai asked. "Yes. Ha, Goddess Li is the best DJ in our club. She's very popular." Day laughed and said, "Beauty, Mr. Chu. Do you want to go there to have fun?" Xuanhuan was stunned. He seldom went to nightclubs and wasn't interested in it, so he looked at Liang Hao. Then, Liang Hao looked at Liang Mengkai. He always listened to his sister on such matters. "All right, let's go to have fun for a while. By the way, let's see if Lila is really that awesome." Liang Mengkai looked at Liang Hao and said. After hearing her sister's words, Liang Hao nodded very elegantly. So, the group of people stood up and walked into the indoor restaurant. When they wanted to pay the bill, Shan Hao's two men stood by and shook their fingers at the restaurant owner. "Sir, madam, your bill has already been paid," the boss said quickly. "I don't need others to pay, I'll pay by myself. How much is it?" Zhang Li took out the wallet from her bag while speaking. "This." The boss didn't know what to do and then looked at the two men standing next to him. After they nodded, a smile appeared on his face and he said, "Well then, 730 yuan in total for the two tables." 700 will be fine. Let me do it," Liang Hao smiled and said. But Zhang Li had already taken out the money and handed it over directly, saying, "It doesn't matter." After that, they went out of the restaurant. Zhang Li, Day, and Liu King walked over there earlier, so they all got in the Volkswagen driven by Liang Mengkai, while Xuanhuan and the others got into Audi Q7s behind them. After 3 minutes, they arrived at the Starry Sky Bar. After the cars were parked, the group of people walked in and Day asked them to sit at table 2. Liu King returned to the wine counter and Zhang Li went backstage to prepare. "Mengkai, you like Zhang Li's brother, right?" After they sat down and drank some wine, Liang Hao couldn't help asking with curiosity. Liang Mengkai was stunned by his words. Then, she blinked her big eyes and nodded, saying, "Yeah, I like him." Chu Hui, who was next to Liang Hao, was surprised. He looked Liang Mengkai up and down, not expecting her to like that powerful man. "Mr. Zhang, I'm very curious about him now." Liang Hao smiled. "But he already has a family, with a beautiful wife and a cute child. I won't have the chance." Liang Mengkai curled her lips and said unhappily. Liang Hao was shocked by her words, and then he said, "Mengkai, you can't." "I know, I just like him a little. I won't do anything inappropriate. Don't worry." Liang Mengkai snorted and then said, "Oh, that's good, that's good." Liang Hao relaxed a bit and then looked at Chu Hui while asking, "Do you know that Mr. Zhang? I heard a little. Someone called him Ruthless Zhang in the underworld. The reason why Dong Danping and Xia Shanhao are so afraid of him is that Mr. Zhang has suppressed 3 forces, including them and Yi Han, the boss of the Eastern District. He's a very powerful person. There seemed to be a battle, but I don't pay much attention to those things. If you want to know, I will inquire about more details later," Chu Hui replied. "There's no need," Liang Hao said with a chuckle. "This Mr. Zhang is very powerful, but only in the underworld forces. I've never heard of him in the business circle, but—" Chu Hui paused, and then said, "There's also a Master Zhang in the martial arts world. He's much more powerful than you could even imagine. It's said that Master Zhang just reached the profound stage, but he killed 2 heavenly stage masters in an instant." "What?" Liang Hao reacted greatly and didn't look like himself. He felt it incredible and said, "Is that true?" "Absolutely." Chu Hui nodded seriously. "Can you tell me more details?" Liang Hao asked. Although he just reached the peak strength, he knew the gap between him and a master. He also knew how big the gap was between the profound stage and the earth stage. What's more, the gap between it and the heaven stage was more like an insurmountable chasm. So, how could a profound stage master kill 2 heaven stage masters in an instant? He was more shocked than the others because he knew what that meant. "The details, this matter has already been sealed, so I only know about the basic plot, not the details. I will tell you about it." Chu Hui shook his head. As soon as he said that, Liang Mengkai became all ears and wanted to know what happened. It went like this. Master Zhang's woman was almost hurt by others, so in anger, he killed 13 people barehanded, including 2 heaven stage masters, an earth stage master, and the troublemakers. People didn't know about Master Zhang at first, but after this incident, he became well known and caused a sensation in the entire martial arts world in Hong Kong. When you say Master Zhang of New Moon Bay, everybody knows about this, Chu Hui said with emotion. In this world, some people really couldn't be offended. Master Zhang of New Moon Bay, Mr. Zhang of New Moon Bay, hey, do you think they're the same person? Liang Mengkai's eyes lit up and she said, could the boss be Master Zhang, the same person? Liang Hao was stunned and then looked at Chu Hui. Well, maybe. Chu Hui shook his head with a smile while saying, but I think that in the martial arts world, masters wouldn't hang out in the underworld. Maybe it's just a coincidence. After all, there are many people surnamed Zhang. Right? No master would care about the underworld forces. Liang Hao smiled. For example, he just reached the peak strength and wouldn't be related to any underworld forces, let alone would a master. However, they didn't know that Liang Mengkai's guess was the fact. While they were talking, a passionate male DJ's voice was heard from the stage. Let's welcome our best DJ, Goddess Li. Amidst the cheers, Zhang Li went to the stage and started the late-night party. She's a very wild girl. Liang Hao looked at Zhang Li at work and found it very interesting. Lila is so cool on the stage. Liang Mengkai smiled. After sitting for more than half an hour, at 12:30, they got up and left the place. Chu Hui returned to his home, while Liang Hao followed Liang Mengkai to the Sea View apartment, which was rented by her at New Moon Bay. It was over 100 square meters with 2 bedrooms, which was suitable for the 2 of them to stay. It's past 1 o'clock. I won't have breakfast tomorrow morning. Hey, brother, I'm going to sleep. Don't wake me up in the morning. Go downstairs to have breakfast if you're hungry, Liang Mengkai muttered before going to the master bedroom. Liang Hao was sitting on the sofa. He shook his head while smiling and then returned to the secondary bedroom. The night went by silently. The next day, Liang Hao woke up at 6 o'clock. After washing up, he put on sportswear and went downstairs to run on the street. That was his habit. He ran past 2 streets and saw several places where breakfast was served. After thinking for a moment, he walked over, but stopped in front of the door. Then, he took out his mobile phone and searched Meng Meng's recreational restaurant, New Moon Bay, Hong Kong. A lot of information was seen. The first one was the special program of tasty food of the world, followed by some recommendations. The restaurant had also been mentioned in the notes of traveling in New Moon Bay. After finding out its location, Liang Hao jogged there. At about 7 o'clock, he arrived at the restaurant and found it wasn't big after seeing the facade. However, there were 5 or 6 people waiting in line at the door. While he was waiting in line, he heard the people in the front talking in excited voices. Wow, there are steamed buns today, we're so lucky. Yeah, I called a few friends just now. They just put on their clothes and came over here even without washing their faces. It felt like the restaurant was very popular. About 20 minutes later, he entered the restaurant and nodded to himself after looking around the environment. He found the small restaurant to be so well decorated, which showed ingenuity. The rules made him feel awkward because diners had to get the food and pay themselves, which seemed to be very unique. Then, he took a half serving of egg fried rice and a half tray of steamed buns. After he ate a steamed bun, after he had one mouthful of rice, hiss, it's wonderful. No wonder my sister mentioned this to me no less than 10 times, now I get it. Liang Hao suddenly realized it. He shook his head and began to focus on enjoying the delicious breakfast. He still wanted to eat some after finishing his food, but he hesitated and finally stopped. It was also his habit to make himself feel only 70% full after a meal. So, he stood up and headed straight to the counter, where he saw a small pile of money. Then, he touched his pocket. It was embarrassing because he found that he only brought his phone, no cash. Then, he began to look around. Is there no payment code? Well, after thinking for a moment, he went to the dining tables and asked 2 people next to him, "Excuse me, I forgot to bring cash. Can you exchange some for me? I'll transfer it to you through WeChat." The handsome face and the gentle tone attracted one of the girls and she quickly said, "Okay, add me on your WeChat." "All right. How much do you want?" the girl asked. 600. During the talk, Liang Hao transferred 600 yuan to the girl through WeChat, and then the girl replied with a smiley emoji. He was given 600 in cash. Then, he placed it on the counter and was just about to turn and leave. Then, he heard a greeting from a VIP members table. "Boss, are you going out? Then I'll stay here to watch the restaurant. Will we open at noon?" "Yes." Liang Hao turned his head and looked over, seeing that a handsome and masculine man, who was about 180 centimeters tall, was walking toward the door with a princess-like little girl in his arms. Is he the boss? He's handsome, looking a bit proud, easygoing. He's indeed attractive. No wonder my sister likes him. Liang Hao looked him up and down. Needless to say his first impression of him was very good. Zhang Han was holding Meng Meng in his arms while walking out. When he saw that Liang Hao was looking at him, he also looked over. Then, the eyes of the 2 men met. It was just like a scene in a movie where time seemed to freeze for a second. Then, Zhang Han pushed the door open and went out with his kid. Liang Hao was still standing in the same place. The look in his eyes was a bit strange, as if he was thinking about something. It's strange. He must be a person with stories. Liang Hao felt that the boss's pupils were very deep, like the supervortexes in the sea, and also black holes, which were very attractive. After walking out of the restaurant, Liang Hao walked back to the apartment. Zhang Han took Meng to play in Mount New Moon. At nearly 9 o'clock, at the land department of New Moon Bay, a Bentley and 2 Rolls-Royces stopped in front of the door. A tall woman with sunglasses walked out from the back seat of the pink Bentley. She was followed by a man in a suit, who was holding some files. 2 groups of people got out of the 2 cars respectively, and they were dressed luxuriously. Just after that, a group of people, headed by Wang Qishan, walked out of the door. He reached out his hand enthusiastically and said, "Welcome." Then, he welcomed all people into the conference room. Wang Qishan presented a map of the surrounding areas of New Moon Bay. It could be seen that several mountains were circled in by some red lines, and Mount New Moon was among them. It's planned that one of the 4 mountains will be developed. The 3 companies of yours are the winning bidders, so you can negotiate which mountain is more suitable. Wang Qishan smiled while speaking. "We've read the required materials and I think we should do some field observations," the woman with sunglasses said. "Right." Wang Qishan nodded and said, "A few days ago, I received a report saying that Mount New Moon has been redeveloped. Let's go check it out." A sneer appeared in his eyes while he was speaking. He still clearly remembered that the man who rented the mountain ridiculed him last time, so he'd made up his mind. If he dares to redevelop Mount New Moon, he'll be severely punished. Chapter 382, No need to explain. But he found one thing strange. It was Liu Sheng who had called to inform him of this event, but he could get not through to him after he came back. It's so strange. How can this person disappear? Originally, professionals were used to patrol up the mountains, but after listening to the call, he decided to solve this problem passingly since he had planned to go there. "Please." Wang Qishan stood up, stretching out his hand to give a sign. The tall woman with a ponytail and a pair of sunglasses stood up first and went out with her secretary, while others were laughing and talking behind her. After all, the value of developing a piece of land was quite a lot in Hong Kong, otherwise they would not have gathered together to negotiate with this matter. While walking out, Wang Qishan looked at the back of the tall woman and sized her up several times, feeling a little hot. She's indeed a slim beauty. Wang Qishan stared at her for a while, then quickly took a few steps, went over to her, and said with a smile, "I heard that Miss Giao has just returned from abroad." "Oh, yes." The tall woman squinted at Wang Qishan. With a coquettish temperament and a budding temptation, she whispered, "I have come back for 2 days. As Miss Giao shoulders the heavy burdens of your family business the instant you came back, you are really a talented woman." Wang Qishan flattered. "Me?" The tall woman gave a charming smile and said, "I'm just at my senior's service and came over since I'm free. Miss Giao, you are so polite. I heard that Miss Giao has furthered your studies in economic management abroad. Now that you returned home this time, you are bound to make aggressive moves," Wang Qishan said with a smile. "Ha ha ha." The tall woman laughed. She did not give him another response, but went straight back to her Bentley. During that period, Wang Qishan secretly sized her up. The V-neck dress showed her curves. Such a temptation of not being able to get the woman even though she was in sight made Wang Qishan feel somewhat desirous. "She's so charming," he muttered to himself. After everyone else got into the cars, he got into his own Audi A6 and took the lead heading for the mountains. It was after 9 o'clock at that time, and the temperature as the sun rose was more moderate than it would be in the afternoon. Therefore, everyone set their thoughts free and wanted to go to the mountains. After driving for 10 minutes, Wang Qishan pulled over alongside the mountain road. After everyone got out of the cars, Wang Qishan waved his hand to Liu Meng behind him. "Pass me the devices." "Okay." Liu Meng took out the drone from his car. The people from the 3 families who were present were all wealthy and respectable. Why did such fine-boned people, dressed in shiny clothes, Go to the barren mountains that had not been developed. Soon, Liu Meng took out 3 tablets from the car, and handed them to the tall woman and the other 2 groups of people respectively. Then he controlled the drone to take off on its own, starting to probe around the upper side of the mountains. This mountain is called Mount Nanwen, with a coverage of 25 hectares, that is, 260,000 square meters. Most of the forest on the mountain has natural trees, including evergreens like pine trees and cypresses with needles and broad leaves, mulberry trees, elms, willows, lindens, aspens, maples, flowering shrubs like lilac, flowering beeches, Cassis tensis, and red cherries. Wang Qishan expertly introduced from the side, although he was narrow-minded and lustful. He excelled in some professional knowledge and knew well about the lands in his charge. After he finished his introduction, a middle-aged man praised it with a nod. It's a good place to develop a chain industry with a luxury villa area, parks, and other recreational facilities. That's right. Another man, who led another group, nodded and put on a satisfactory look. As for the tall woman next to Wang Qishan, she was expressionless without saying anything. She looked aside, finding that Wang Qishan's eyes were about to fall into her dress with a V-neck, but she did not mind. She entered the really wild circle in her years in the West, and she had learned how to fully show her sensuality. After another 5 minutes, Liu Meng lowered the drone. At that point, Wang Qishan waved his hand and said, "Let's go to the next destination, just ahead of us." They got into their cars respectively and went to the next place. After the drone rose up, people looked at the tablets in their hands again. This mountain is called Mount Yufeng. Look at its appearance. You can find that the main mount is slightly higher than the others. On the mountainside lie 4 short peaks, echoing the main mount at a distance. They are like 5 hills, and on this mountain, he introduced it in detail for a long time. However, the listeners did not gasp in admiration on this mountain this time. 2 of the peaks are too steep, which are not in accord with our requirements, so let's go to the next place. The middle-aged man said. Well, Xiao Meng, take the drone back. Wang Qishan ordered. During that leisure time, he said. The next destination is Mount New Moon, located by the sea. It approaches this ring road from the west and is next to the Mount Xiang in the east. The place where the 2 mountains meet is not far from the beach. On the south side of the mountain lies a cliff more than 20 meters high, under which is the sea. In the last 2 years, some bold people would dive there. If there were reefs and the sea were not calm, they would have died. Let's go. The tall woman said, as if she was satisfied with the location of Mount New Moon. Everyone in the other 2 groups also nodded and said, Mount New Moon enjoys the best location and needs to be mainly observed. If the terrain is flat, it will be a perfect place. You can be assured that its terrain is flat. Wang Qishan smiled and took the lead getting into the car. After turning a corner, it took him 5 minutes to reach Mount New Moon. After everyone got out of their cars, Wang Qishan said, "This is Mount New Moon, which is by the sea." Hiss. It seems that the air quality has become much better. The area of Mount New Moon is relatively small, only 15 hectares, and the jungles here are relatively sparse. The forest here seems to be much denser than those of the 2 mountains we saw before. The middle-aged man said. Wang Qishan sized the mountain up and was shocked. He found something seemingly strange because he remembered that this mountain had not been covered with such lush vegetation the last time he had been here. I think so, Wang Qishan said with embarrassment. At that moment, Liu Meng lifted off the drone. Everyone looked at the screens. There is a large number of trees on Mount New Moon, most of which. Wang Qishan made an introduction again, but he was interrupted before finishing speaking this time. Are there any trees on this mountain? The middle-aged man interrupted without mercy. Wang Qishan was stunned in an instant. The pictures recording the appearance of Mount New Moon 3 months ago were still saved on his computer, which showed that the mountain was dotted with dense trees, but now. How did it seem to be bald? The lawn looks really good. How does it seem to be transformed? It is just like one in the back garden. Head Wang, you told us that the mountain is rented out. I wonder. It's impossible. Wang Qishan's facial muscles trembled and he said, how can it become so after having rented it out for just more than a month? What are we looking at? The middle-aged man asked. Wang Qishan's face changed as if he were choked. Hey, it really is someone's back garden. Suddenly, the tall woman exclaimed. People looked at the screens again, then their faces all changed. The drone rose to a certain height, overlooking Mount New Moon in midair. It was not the front mountain, but the dazzling back mountain that surprised them. The planting area, the livestock area, the pond, the pet area, and the surrounding jungle seemed to fringe this land of treasure. Wang Qishan was already dumbfounded at that time. This is a really good place. The tree on the top of the mountain looks so beautiful. Once we decide to develop this land, the tree must be kept, for it will definitely attract people's attention. Moreover, this tree can also raise the price of the mansion built on the top in the future. The middle-aged person praised it. There are so many pet dogs on the back mountain. Hey, is there also a gorilla, a man, and a child? I wonder if he is the one who rented the mountain. It is really time-consuming and labor-intensive to transform this mountain into such a masterpiece. It is really elegant. Another man was completely amazed. At the same time, on the back mountain, Zhang Han was playing with Meng Meng. Huh? Meng Meng was suddenly surprised. She stared at the sky with her big eyes and reached out her small finger, then said, Papa, Papa, look, there's a small plane. After looking up and catching sight of the drone, Zhang Han said, perhaps someone is observing this place. Oh, it's not ours. Is that someone else secretly staring at us? Meng Meng asked. Yes. Zhang Han nodded. At that moment, Dai looked at the drone several times as its mouth twisted, and shouted at Little Hai, Whoa, 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 give me a stone. Whoosh. Little Hai rushed to the jungle behind it in a blink of an eye. It was difficult to find a stone on the mountain, but there were many rocks under the small cliff at the edge of the jungle, varying in size. About 30 seconds later, Little Hai came back with a stone as big as a palm in its mouth. Ooh, 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 ooh. Dai took the stone and shouted at Zhang Han. Shall I shoot it down? Zhang Han chuckled with a nod. Then, whoa, Dai roared and gave the finger to the drone. Well, oh. Meng Meng also pouted and called out in a low voice. The next moment, whoosh, Dai threw the stone in its hand. All of a sudden, the stone seemed to have turned into a cannonball. Boom, it hit the drone with precision, and with a thud, the drone fell to the ground quietly. Down the mountain. All that everyone saw was just a stone growing bigger and bigger on the screens of the tablets in their hands. It seemed to be aimed at them, which startled them when the screens darkened. Liu Meng. A voice filled with anger was heard. Here I am. Liu Meng's face was a little pale, and he looked at his boss, feeling really cold. It was him who had introduced Mount New Moon to the tenants, but now it was already transformed into a bald mountain. Since Head Wang was in great anger, he was likely to have a hard time in the future. Give me the phone number of that man surnamed Zhang. Wang Qishan was short of breath. Okay. Liu Meng rushed to scroll through his mobile phone contacts. Because of his tension, it took him twice as long to find Zhang Han's number. Here it is. Liu Meng carefully handed his mobile phone over. Head Wang, why are you so excited? The middle-aged man looked at him with curiosity a few times and said, the condition of the mountain is more suitable for our requirements. I think Mount New Moon is our best choice and we don't really want to go to the last mountain. I think so too, aside from its relatively small size, its terrain, trend, and location are indeed excellent. Another man said with a nod. However, he was more satisfied with its small size. Since it was big enough for their future plan, he could invest less. Even the tall woman looked at Wang Qishan in confusion, failing to figure out the reason why he was angry. I have declared that the tenant is not allowed to move even a tree. Now, he has obviously broken the rule, so I have to teach him a lesson. Wang Qishan took a few deep breaths to calm himself, then dialed the number with Liu Meng's mobile phone. After the phone rang 3 times, the line was connected. Mr. Zhang, shouldn't you give me a reasonable explanation for what happened on Mount New Moon? If you don't give me a clear explanation, I think that we need to talk with each other later. You have violated the rules. Wang Qishan was seething and spoke with a trembling tone. What explanation do you want? The man on the phone said flatly. ? Hearing what he said, Wang Qishan was so angry that he almost bit his tongue. I asked you to explain to me, so how could you ask me? I am now at the foot of Mount New Moon. Oh, just wait for a while. After he finished saying that, Zhang Han hung up the phone. Wang Qishan's hands shook slightly, and he had an overwhelming urge to smash the mobile phone. Considering that people of 3 families, especially a young beauty, were around him, he abandoned this idea. Demeanor. Keep my virtue. Therefore, Wang Qishan calmed down, but he was temperamental at that point. After waiting for 10 minutes, Zhang Han still had not shown up. Let's go up the mountain. With the contract, he cannot blame me if I punish him with a severe penalty. Wang Qishan said, then intended to take the lead to go up the mountain. At that time, a man slowly walked out of the jungle in the mountains. Everyone looked over and fixed their eyes on him. The man quickly approached. When they saw his appearance clearly, the tall woman's arm shook slightly, and she made a fist then loosened it. Director, he is Mr. Zhang, Liu Meng whispered beside Wang Qishan. Wang Qishan glared at him. If these guests were not here, he was bound to say, of course I know, for I have seen him before. Do you think I am confused? When Zhang Han walked close to him, Wang Qishan said coldly, Mr. Zhang, please give me a reasonable explanation. This matter. Zhang Han said really calmly. Before he finished speaking, the tall woman interjected, Head Wang, we don't understand what explanation you want to receive. The condition of the mountain apparently meets our demands, so why are you asking him here? I think that renting this mountain is out of your willingness, and sometimes the contract can't show every detail. Besides, what you did affects our mood. If we fail to cooperate with each other this time, I think that you will be to blame. The woman's words startled several people present. It seemed that she wanted to defend the man. However, the representatives of the other 2 parties also nodded in favor of her. Indeed, the lay of this mountain and its flat ground were more suitable for rebuilding something. Wang Qishan was a little dizzy. He could not make out how he and his group had turned against each other. In addition, at that moment, the tall woman looked at Zhang Han with a smile and said slowly, I think this gentleman does take care of the mountain. It's good to set your thoughts free. I think that you'd better invite us to go up the mountain to go sightseeing. What do you think? The tall woman took off her sunglasses on the last word. At that point, her big eyes gleamed with amusement. Because her name was Qiaoluo. Zhang Han's eyes were fixed on her for half a second, then he looked away calmly, ignoring her. He looked at Wang Qishan and said plainly, there is no need to explain to you what I did in my lifetime. If you have any questions, you can ask your director. After finishing speaking, Zhang Han turned toward the jungle directly. Qiaoluo froze and her eyes were filled with coldness. Wang Qishan felt so mad that his face turned white and red alternately. When he was about to say something, the man in front of him stopped and turned his head, then said slowly, oh, by the way, you have seen the gorilla and the dog on the mountain. Without my permission, you cannot go up the mountain. If something goes wrong, you shouldn't blame me for not warning you. After saying that, Zhang Han went straight away. Damn, he's so hateful. How can he take such an awful attitude? Wang Qishan said in anger, why did he treat me in this way since he broke the rules? Ha ha, it's really funny. I am going to inform the director and ask him to deal with this matter strictly. He's always so arrogant, Qiao said faintly. Do you know him, Miss Qiao? Wang Qishan asked, baffled. Qiao did not reply to him but said with a smile as if she was not listening, I'm increasingly interested in this mountain. Now that you have interest in it, just go up the mountain. Mount New Moon is a land resource, which does not belong to a person. Don't be afraid. A man with a flat-top haircut sneered and said, That's right. Do you want to go up the mountain with me? If you take a fancy to this land and come to an agreement with me, I will handle this problem, Wang Qishan said. Let's go up. The environment seems to be very good. The man with the flat top nodded. This time, Qiao did not say anything, but just went up the mountain following Wang Qishan. Only after crossing the jungle and stepping on the lawn did they see the amazing scenery here. While walking, Qiao was lost in thought. I saw a little girl. Is she his child? Not really. How is he in Hong Kong now? As he was like a beggar in Shangjing, it seems that he leads a good life now. His face did not change when he caught sight of me. Besides, he did not respond to me but put on an arrogant look. Why is he so calm? A frigid feeling gradually climbed up Qiao's body as she walked, leaving a message that anyone else should not get close. She did not come to her senses until she walked out of the jungle and heard a few exclamations from the people nearby. After she looked around, her eyes slightly widened. What a beautiful place. That tree is so tall, it looks more shocking than it did from the air. This is the right place. We must develop this land. The man with the flat top said with excitement. Yes, this is a good place. Huh? What's that? The older middle-aged man suddenly froze before finishing speaking. He looked forward and shouted, It looks like a dog. Ah, the dog is coming. Everyone looked over, seeing a black and golden dog rushing at them. They felt really nervous at that point. Fortunately, Little Hai stopped in front of them. It stared at them fiercely and showed its fangs, growling in a low voice as if it was about to attack them. What should we do? Wang Qishan's face turned pale, and he was at a loss. This dog's fangs were so sharp, once it bit them, they would feel a lot of pain. Don't run, it will rush to bite you if you run. Step back slowly, step back slowly. The middle-aged man with the flat top said in a trembling voice. As he spoke, he slowly stepped back, and the others also followed him after hearing what he said. However, Little Hai glanced at him with contempt. Am I an ordinary dog? Ow! Suddenly, Little Hai barked loudly and rushed forward as if it intended to bite them. Ah! Run! Ouch! Everyone hurriedly turned and ran at a high speed. They ran so hastily that even Wang Qishan accidentally bumped into the tree. He got up and continued to run, ignoring the pain on his head. Seeing everyone fleeing, Little Hai twisted its mouth in disdain. Then it turned and strolled to the back mountain slowly. Chapter 383, Increases in Membership. They ran out of the jungle with apprehension, all short of breath. Ouch, I probably have a bump on my forehead. Wang Qishan touched his forehead and found a bump as big as a fingernail, feeling somewhat painful. But at that time, no one cared about him. Instead, they panted and exclaimed, That dog is so fierce, we'll be miserable if bitten by it. After speaking for a moment, Liu Meng reacted and rushed to Wang Qishan, then greeted him. How are you, Head Wang? Let's go back and I'll ask the doctor to give you some medicine. Let's go. Wang Qishan frowned and looked at Qiao and the other people, then said, Sorry, I need to go back first. Excuse me for my absence. Then he got into his car and left directly. Let's go too. The man with the flat-top haircut took a deep breath and drove away. Qiao snorted, Get into the cars. She and her subordinates got into the Bentley. Find out his address in Hong Kong within a day. Qiao looked at Mount New Moon with emotion. On the way back to the lands department, Wang Qishan went to the hospital. The doctor gave him 2 anti-inflammatory drugs and told him the matter's needing attention. Then Wang Qishan rushed back to the lands department. "Head Wang, what's wrong with you?" The instant he entered the lobby on the first floor, a female employee asked in a hurry when she saw Wang Qishan's appearance. "I'm fine," Wang Qishan responded, then asked, "Is the director here?" "He's at the office," the woman replied. Then Wang Qishan went straight to the elevator. Seeing Liu Meng still following him, he said in anger, "Why are you keeping pace with me?" I will go back now." Liu Meng was alarmed and whispered, "Our head possibly is in a really bad mood, so I'd better leave first." After finishing his words, Liu Meng went backwards secretly. Wang Qishan snorted and pressed the up button. He walked to the director's office with vigorous strides. Wang Qishan wiped his face in front of the door and adjusted his expression, then knocked on the door. Knock, knock, knock. "Coming." A strong voice was heard from the office. Wang Qishan opened the door and glanced at the director. The director, probably in his 50s, was in good health and spoke in a loud and powerful voice. "Director, I have an important thing to report to you." Wang Qishan hid his pride and said in a low voice, "What's wrong?" Zhang Long glanced at him and asked, "This is the case. More than a month ago, we signed a contract with someone that had various restrictions to rent Mount New Moon for 1 year. Today I guided the representatives of 3 companies that had won the bid to check it out. But I found a large piece of the woods had disappeared from Mount New Moon. Someone planted grass and raises livestock there. Now that he violates the rules and has a negative impact on our corporation, should we punish him severely? Oh, we should punish him in accordance with procedures." After saying that, the director looked at his computer screen. "Yes." Wang Qishan got up and walked out as his eyes were imbued with excitement. However, after he just took 2 steps, the director said, "Wait. Did you mention Mount New Moon?" Yes." Wang Qishan stopped and stared at the director. The director seemed to remember something all of a sudden, then he said, "Wait a second first and let me ask my superior." He remembered that a group of people went to Mount New Moon to steal in the past few days and had created a great disturbance. Later, they were directly taken to the general office in the southern district. He also heard that someone probably contacted Director Dong Xiangquan directly. If that was the case, the person was likely to have a strong background. So, he might as well ask his superior about this matter first. Therefore, he dialed Dong Xiangquan's private number. "Elder brother Dong, may I ask you something about Mount New Moon? Today, someone went there to check it out, but as a result." Under Wang Qishan's gaze, the director gradually put on a thunderstruck face. Okay, I know what to do." After saying that, the director hung up the phone as his mouth trembled several times. He looked at Wang Qishan and said while waving his hand, "Don't worry about Mount New Moon and allow him to do whatever he wants. It's none of your business even if he destroys the mountain." Huh? Wang Qishan suddenly was dumbfounded. "Didn't you hear what I said?" The director said, I got it. Shall I just let it go?" "But the person who rents the mountain is very arrogant." Wang Qishan said hesitantly, "Moreover, if we don't care about his behavior, will it influence? The impact has nothing with you, just let it go," the director said with no doubt. "Yes." Wang Qishan was suddenly frustrated and said, "I should leave now." Then he went outside. However, he stopped after taking a few steps forward, turned his head, and said, "Director, the 3 winning bidders have also taken a fancy to Mount New Moon. Should we continue to cooperate with them?" Cooperation. The director thought for 10 seconds and finally said, "I have not received any notification, so we can deal with it normally." "Yes." Wang Qishan left. After he went out, his eyes were filled with confusion. What's going on? How does the director overlook the illegal behavior of reconstructing the mountain? At 11:30, Yu Qingqing and Zhao Du arrived at the apartment that Liang Mengkai was renting. "Qingqing, Niang, let me introduce my brother Lian Hao to you." "Brother, they are my friends," King and Zhao Du, Liang Mengkai said. Hello. Liang Hao nodded with a smile. Hello. King smiled and said, Mengkai, your brother is handsome. Yes, he looks younger than you. Zhao Du twisted his body and said, a filthy mouth can't utter decent language. Liang Mengkai glared at Zhao Dal and then said, let's go have dinner, I am so hungry. Let's go. They went out. King was driving the car, and Zhao Du was sitting in the passenger seat, while Liang Mengkai and Liang Hao were in the back seat. By the way, I need to call Sun Donging first to borrow his membership card, otherwise you are not allowed to have access to dishes for members, brother. While speaking, Liang Mengkai took out her mobile phone. You don't need to borrow it. Liang Hao stretched out his hand and waved it, then said, later, I will buy a membership card directly. Ah, great. Liang Mengkai turned off her mobile phone, then was a little shocked. She sized Liang Hao up a few times and said, it's so strange, brother, according to your character. I had breakfast there in the morning, and the dishes did taste delicious, which are worth that price. Liang Hao shook his head with a smile. Oh, you went there in the morning? What did you eat, egg fried rice or noodle soup? Liang Mengkai asked. I ate a half bowl of egg fried rice and a half tray of small steamed buns, Liang Hao replied. Oh. Liang Mengkai gave him an angry stare and said murderously, why didn't you bring me some small steamed buns? Huh? Does the restaurant permit diners to take the food away? I did not see the rules and thought that such behavior was not allowed. Besides, I did not know who I could ask since there was no waiter there. Liang Hao touched his forehead. HMPH. Liang Mengkai snorted and said, buy the membership card yourself, and I don't need to bother borrowing it. Mengkai, when did you get up? At that moment, King grinned and asked, 9 o'clock, I went to sleep late yesterday, Liang Mengkai replied casually. Ha ha ha, you got up at 9 o'clock, how could you eat a lot if you ate steamed buns at that point? Zhao Du curled his lips and said, that's right, I can eat more delicious food at noon. Liang Mengkai secretly swallowed, only feeling hungry at that time. That was then. Zhao Du sighed and said, when the boss's wife was there, every dinner was like a feast. Hey, now, besides Meng, we have access to many fewer dishes than before. I have no idea when the boss's wife will come back. I still want to eat the hot pot I ate last time, King said with a sigh. Did the boss's wife go out? Liang Hao said, I saw the owner of the restaurant and a little girl in the morning. The boss is really handsome, and the kid is very beautiful and lovely. The boss's wife is also very beautiful. She, however, wears a pair of sunglasses every time she goes out, so I have not seen her specific facial features, Zhao Du said. Their baby is certainly good looking because of their good genes. Remembering Meng's cute appearance, King said enviously, I am probably familiar with the boss's wife, as if I had seen her before, but I do not know who she is since I haven't seen her face clearly. After thinking for a while, Liang Mengkai said, although she was not willing to admit that Xian was more beautiful than her, that was the truth. Oh. Liang Hao nodded, remembering Xian, who was on a business trip. He sighed with emotion. Unexpectedly, she had been married for a few years. However, he had never expected that the restaurant owner's wife was Xian. As they chatted with each other, they arrived at the restaurant. It was about 12 o'clock at that time, and there were more than 20 people lined up in front of the restaurant. Liang Hao was somewhat touched when he saw that many of the people looked grand and thought that the members of this restaurant seemed to be respectable. There's Sister Liang, is he your friend? He can use my membership card. Sun Donging, who had already sat in the middle, waved his hand and said, He's my brother, and he will buy one himself, Liang Mengkai said with a smile. What are we going to eat at noon? Is there any meat? King could not wait to ask. 2 dishes are to be served at noon today, ahed prawns and broccoli with dried mushrooms. Xiang turned his head and said, really, That's quite good. Yu Qingqing grinned. But there seems to be such a small amount, Xuanhuan added. Ah. Yu Qingqing froze. Liang Hao glanced at Zhang Han, who was cooking in the kitchen, then said, should I buy a membership card through the boss? Come here, I can help you apply for the membership card. Xuanhuan stood up and went to the counter with a laptop. After taking out a bank card from the drawer, he said, just transfer the money. Okay. Liang Hao nodded and took out his mobile phone and began to transfer. At that point, there were two men sitting on the inner side of a table for ordinary diners. One of them was in his 30s, dressed in casual clothes. He was perfectly groomed like an elite, bearing a quiet temperament. Opposite him sat a middle-aged man in his 40s with a square face, who was calm and looked at the man opposite him reverently. Let's taste the dishes here. The man in the casual suit whispered, then got up and went to the counter, while the middle-aged man followed him without saying anything. I want to apply for 2 membership cards. The man in the casual suit said with a smile. His tone was really flat, as if 20 million yuan membership cards only cost 200 yuan. Puff, ahem, ahem. Xuanhuan coughed a few times. The membership cards were sold a few at a time. 3 membership cards cost 30 million yuan. The boss earned money so fast. This is the bank card. The only thing you should do is transfer the money. Xuanhuan pointed at the bank card. His words attracted Liang Hao's attention, so he glanced at the man, realizing that there were many members here. However, when his eyes were fixed on the middle-aged man behind the man in the casual suit, he felt faintly stressed. This pressure, a chi strength master? Liang Hao was startled. This restaurant is indeed a place where powerful men show up. But he did not know that the people who inadvertently failed to control their aura were just promoted, commonly known as CO lists. It's done. The two of them showed the transfer record to Xuanhuan. Okay, I'll give you cards numbered 15, 16, and 17. Xuanhuan took out 3 cards and handed them over. Simultaneously, he said, oh, by the way, do you have your ID cards? I need to record them. If not, you can tell me your name and contact information. He was not aware if Zhao Feng recorded the members' information when he sold the cards. Now that Zhao Feng was not here, he might as well record them. Xuanhuan thought. Liang Hao, my phone number. Liang Hao said directly. It seems that he is Liang Mengkai's brother. Xuanhuan wrote it down while thinking. After finishing his task, he nodded. The man in the casual suit did not say anything, but just handed him a business card. Mr. Sheng, contact information. There were only a name and his phone number on it. However, after glancing at the name and scrutinizing the man in the casual clothes, Liang Hao suddenly remembered something and his eyes were suffused with consternation. This restaurant is indeed a place where powerful men show up. Liang Hao sighed in his mind, then turned and walked back to the table. Xuanhuan remembered their information in his mind and said, Mr. Sheng, you are already members and can sit at the members' table here. Thank you. Mr. Sheng nodded, then sat down at a small, quiet table by the window beside the piano. Although another 3 membership cards were sold, Zhang Han just took a look and continued cooking. He had found that the middle-aged man was a profound stage master when he first came here last night. Apparently, he acted like a bodyguard, and that the man in the casual suit possibly was of high status. This scene did attract the attention of other people in the restaurant. Another 3 membership cards were sold. It was really awesome. After thinking for a while, Xuanhuan did not go back to the table, but went outside. He changed a few words on the bulletin board. Membership cards, 10 million yuan each, sold, 1720. After he finished writing, he patted himself on the ass and walked back into the restaurant. Among the over 20 people lined up, many people were shocked and looked at each other. Which rule has been changed? I have no idea. Is the boss going to give us some preferential terms and allow us to taste some dishes? Stop dreaming. The boss is disinclined to cook every day. Just go and see if you want to know what happened. A man in his early 20s spoke and ran over, after he found the difference between this sentence and the former one. His eyes widened. K members, someone bought the membership cards. Now 17 of the 20 cards have been sold, leaving only 3. Damn it, how many rich people. Hiss. How terrible. Hey, the members of this restaurant are all talented. I like this place very much because I can see so many billionaires every day. Chapter 384, Meng's Complaints. Seeing what was happening outside the restaurant, Xuanhuan nodded with satisfaction. As the time passed, a lot of people seemed to have regarded the small restaurant as a high-end and magnificent representative in their minds. He also felt honored. Liang Hao was sitting at the table with Liang Mengkai behind him, where Zhao Feng always sat. The two people over there are so wealthy that they directly applied for 2 membership cards, Zhao Du whispered. After hearing his words, Liang Hao smiled and shook his head. Of course, they were rich. Judging from the man's business card and appearance, he guessed his origins. Mr. Sheng, the chairman of Western Airlines and New Technology, which was one of the 5 internet giants in Huanation. As the most inconspicuous top rich man, he was worth 130 billion yuan. Many people knew about a new technology because it was mainly engaged in network defense, such as the firewalls widely used by ordinary people. But besides that, it also cooperated with many large enterprises, and even established a deep cooperative relationship with the authorities. Mr. Sheng, who seldom attended various parties, was relatively unknown in terms of his reputation. Although he was less famous than Liu Qingfeng, no one could look down upon his status. He had not expected such a giant to show up in this restaurant. Liang Hao knew more about his deeds. Under his leadership, his company gradually prospered, which was quite legendary. Liang Hao had heard from the elders of his family that Mr. Sheng of a new technology had an extraordinary understanding of network technology, and that he once was nicknamed Black Ghost. Perhaps few people heard of this name, but if it was mentioned in the hacker world, many people would definitely put on a reverent look, because this name was a symbol of one of the most 3 supreme hackers in the world. Compared with his achievements, mine are nothing at all. Liang Hao sighed with emotion in his heart. When Pearson saw another 3 membership cards were sold in such a short time, his face shrank. They cost 30 million yuan. Wow, rich men. I also have a membership card worth 10 million yuan. I am also a rich man. After thinking for a while, Pearson took his membership card from his wallet and admired it for a moment with satisfaction before putting it back. The lunch was soon ready. Zhang Han took the dishes for Meng and himself to the 2nd floor. Many members went to serve themselves in succession. Everyone only had access to about 3 prawns, and the other dish was also not abundant. Is this ahat prawns? It smells good. Pearson closed his eyes and sniffed carefully. Do you know this dish as well? Wang Qiang laughed and said, of course I know it. It is one of the dishes of the formal banquet for the elderly. I have good knowledge of the formal banquets in Huanation as well as the specialties in various regions. Unfortunately, I have only tasted only 1/10 or 2/10 of these dishes. Pearson sighed slightly. Huanation cherishes vast territory and abundant resources, so I still have a long way to go to taste all that delicious food. This ahat prawns ranks 2nd of the 3 most famous prawns with Shangjing's features, and it also belongs to the famous dishes of Dan's cuisine in Shangjing. Wang Qiang shook his head, started to recollect and said, when I was in Shangjing last time, I enjoyed this dish the most times. This dish is particular about processing art, paying attention to the shape. The chef will divide the shrimps into 2 sections to make 2 shapes. The front parts are burned with shells into red shrimp sections, bearing a balanced sweet and salty flavor, while the second parts are coated with filling without shells and fried into crispy golden yellow shrimp segments. After they are placed on the plate, the dish is red at the top and yellow at the bottom. Because its raised shape is like an ahat with a big belly, It is named Ahad prawns. Oh, I see, Uncle Wang. After finishing speaking, Pearson rubbed his hand and said excitedly, "Let me try it, it must taste great." Then he began to enjoy a prawn. After putting it into his mouth, he started his performance again. "Hey, it tastes tender and fragrant, crispy and delicious." Other diners were also immersed in the food at that moment. Mr. Sheng, sitting at the table by the window, did not move the prawns first, but tasted the broccoli with dried mushrooms first. After taking a bite of the mushroom, Mr. Sheng closed his eyes and whispered, "It really tastes like the dishes my mother cooked when I was young." At that point, at the tea table on the second floor, Meng was also eating joyfully. The mushrooms are so delicious, as are the big shrimps. The dishes cooked by Papa are the most delicious. Papa is the most awesome. Meng muttered vaguely, "You can eat more if you like." Zhang Han smiled with satisfaction. "No, Mama told me that I should not overeat but leave some space." Meng said seriously, "It doesn't matter, you can eat more if you want," Zhang Han said and smiled softly. So I will take 3 more bites. Is it okay? You can eat as much as you like. Whenever he stayed with Meng, Zhang Han felt very warm. Of course, he would feel better when all the family members were together. Xian, however, still had to rush about since she did not realize her dreams yet. Therefore, Zhang Han would accompany her to do whatever she had wanted to do but had failed before in the future. Happy times always fly so fast. When people are engaged in delicacies, they would be stuffed unconsciously. At about 2 o'clock, the diners left in succession. Xuanhuan sat at a table on the first floor, with a tin of beer in his hand, playing mobile games and occasionally taking a sip of wine. Zhang Han and Meng chatted on the second floor with Xian on video for a while, then they went to the first floor, and Meng started playing with toys. It was almost 4 o'clock. A light pink Bentley slowly stopped in a parking spot in front of the restaurant. Bang! A tall woman got out of the car from the passenger seat, then smiled as she looked at the plaque of the restaurant. It was Qiaoluo. At that time, she was wearing a long dress with a part on the side, which was a little revealing, wearing a silver handbag and a pair of high heels. She walked into the restaurant. After glancing around, she saw Zhang Han sitting on the sofa and the little girl walking over. Clang, clang, clang. Every time her heels touched the ground, a crisp sound was heard, which attracted Xuan's attention. He glanced at her and said from his seat, "Lady, the restaurant is not open now, you've come too early." "Did I come too early?" Qiaoluo stopped. She looked at Xuan, then took off her sunglasses and said, "I think I've come late." After finishing her words, she looked at Zhang Han with a playful gaze and said, "What do you think, Zhang Han?" Xuan was shocked. Does she know the boss? Seeing what had happened, Xuan fell silent. Now that she knew the boss, he did not need to stop her. Zhang Han looked at Qiaoluo without saying anything. He faintly realized that Qiaoluo was going to make trouble here. He still remembered that Qiaoluo had called him before he had had an accident. She had said that he had been the only person who had dumped her. She had said that she had never been dumped by others, and she would hate him forever. She had said that one day he was bound to regret treating her in this way. Did she turn her love to hatred? It was not very appropriate. Zhang Han thought that she was obsessed with and split hairs over their relationship, or else she would not have sent him so many messages. He felt afraid after thinking it over carefully. Her arrival did not cause any changes in Zhang Han's emotions. He had a clear conscience. Besides, Xian was aware that he had had a girlfriend. However, since he got into a committed relationship with Xian, he could not be close to other women in the future because women are so terrible once they are jealous. Moreover, Zhang Han not only could not, but also did not want to approach other ladies. Even when he had just returned, he had not taken Xian seriously. Zhang Han had seen a large number of saintesses in the cultivation world, so appearance alone could not impress him. Xian also mentioned that occasionally now, for she still held a grudge. But now his attitude changed. Meng and Xian completely occupied his mind. He, therefore, did not want to be implicated with other women, especially those who had been his girlfriends. "What's up?" Zhang Han said flatly. After hearing Zhang Han's tone, Qiao sneered inconspicuously. She walked over to the sofa and smiled playfully, then said, "What's wrong? Don't you welcome your former lover?" Puff! A large mouthful of beer was sprayed from Xuanyang's mouth and nose, dotting the entire table. He quickly took out a napkin and began to wipe the table, planning to go out for a while after finishing wiping. "Huh?" Meng's eyes widened. "Lover? No." Meng pouted and said with great dissatisfaction, "My papa only has me and mama, no one else." "Ha ha ha, is she your daughter? She's really cute." Although Qiao was smiling, Meng totally disliked her. "She's so annoying. Papa does not belong to anyone except mama and me." Meng's possessive instinct was stimulated. That was to say, she was touched. She leaned against Zhang Han's arms, with her arms around Zhang Han's neck, glaring at Qiao with her big bright eyes and refusing to concede an inch. Seeing Meng's appearance, Zhang Han had mixed emotions. He seemed to be the most beloved treasure of Meng. Meng did not allow others to rob her of what she cherished. He was really delighted by Meng's attitude, and he also showed his attitude toward Qiao standing in front of him, then asked calmly again, "Do you have any problem?" "Of course." Seeing Zhang Han's gaze, Qiao became more and more annoyed. The more she felt unhappy, the wider her smile was. She said, "I heard that you opened a restaurant, so I've come here to congratulate you in a hurry. Only you, arrogant child Zhang, would price a membership card at 10 million yuan. Therefore, I'm going to apply for a membership card. Are you surprised? Are you surprised? Have you asked me, Qiao, whether you can lead a carefree and comfortable life in Hong Kong?" This was what she wanted to express. "Oh, I refuse." After finishing his words, Zhang Han looked away. "You refuse me, are you? Afraid of me?" Qiao tilted her head and asked casually. "Afraid?" Zhang Han chuckled and said, "Although we did not lay our cards on the table, we both clearly know what happened, so there is no need to say more. Don't bother me again." Xuanyang sent her away. Zhang Han's attitude made Qiao go into a great rage. "Why are you so proud since you are not the child of the Zhang family?" She was somewhat helpless, for she seemed to have lost the first game this time. "Lady, please." At that moment, Xuanyang also knew what was going on, so he went up to Qiao and made a gesture. "See you next time," Qiao said and specifically waved her hand to Meng, then added with a smile, "Little darling, goodbye, HMPH." Meng snorted, then turned her head away from looking at her. "I don't want to say goodbye to you." Seeing Meng's behavior, Qiao turned to leave, leaving her laughter behind. But after she left the restaurant, she stopped laughing and her face clouded over. She strode back to her car and clenched her fist, then instructed the driver, "Go to Yiking Technology." "Okay." The car drove away and stopped at Yiking Technology in the eastern district of South Island. Yiking Technology was one of the subordinate industries of the Qiao family. After learning that Qiao came here in person, the president of the company personally greeted her. "Take me to the safety technical director." Qiao directly ordered him. Then they went to the director's office, in front of which she waved her hand and asked them not to follow her. "Miss Qiao." The director entered the office with Qiao. Since he did not make her intention known, he said first, "I don't know if you have anything to ask me to do. Crack this QQ account." "Okay." The director sat in front of the computer and said, "I don't know if Miss Qiao knows more information that will help me crack it faster. I only know 2 former passwords. That's enough. The passwords are Okay, it will take me about 20 minutes. The director's hand moved quickly and pressed the keyboard. Qiaoluoluo had an obsession in her mind that she wanted to know whether Zhang Han had just not replied to her messages or had not been aware that she had sent him a lot of messages. If he had ignored her messages, the revenge she would take would be several times more serious. About 17 minutes later, I worked it out. The director wiped the sweat from his forehead and said, he thought that Qiaoluoluo would think highly of him if he performed well. You can go out now, Qiaoluoluo said, then sat at the official desk, starting to flip through the messages. Did he log in more than a month ago? I will be angry if he did not reply to my messages after reading them. He did not contact any others, and this account seems to be abandoned. However, some emails were sent out through it. What, are you actually Han Yang? Qiaoluoluo's pupils suddenly shrank and took on an amazed expression, but then she sneered. Interesting, how haven't I found out that you are so versatile? Qiaoluoluo flipped through the messages while drinking tea. When it was about 6 o'clock, she went downstairs and got back into her car. Go to that restaurant. Well. In Meng Meng's recreational restaurant. When Qiaoluoluo just left, Meng Meng pouted and asked while staring at Zhang Han, Papa, who is she? Huh. Zhang Han thought for a while, then said, a person I have known before. HMPH. Meng Meng doesn't like her. Well, now that Meng Meng doesn't like her, Papa doesn't either. Zhang Han touched Meng Meng's little head with a smile. After hearing his words, Meng Meng, whose big clear eyes were shining with the light of thinking, sat aside with satisfaction and murmured, well, Papa, I want to look at the photos saved on your phone. Fine. Zhang Han took out his mobile phone and opened the album, then said as he showed the photos to Meng Meng, look at this one. Do you still remember where we took this photo? Of course, in that amusement park. Meng Meng likes to go to the amusement park. Meng Meng laughed and then said, Papa, I would like to drink coconut milk. I'll get it for you. Zhang Han got up and walked to the kitchen. However, when he was about to turn around after taking a bottle of coconut milk from the kitchen, he heard Meng Meng speaking hastily. Mama, you should come back quickly. A bad guy came here who said that she was Papa's lover. Poof! Xuyong almost sprayed out the wine in his mouth, feeling somewhat dumbfounded. My gosh, the little girl is so smart. However, in Meng Meng's view, the longest name, my darling Yan, on the contact list represented her Mama. It was Mama who had changed the name, and Meng Meng bore it in mind. Therefore, it was very easy for her to call Ziyan. Zhang Han's mouth trembled slightly as he walked back with embarrassment. At that point, Ziyan had just changed her clothes and was ready to go out from the motorhome, but when she received the call, she stopped all of a sudden. A bad guy, lover? What does that mean? Is the one his former girlfriend? Ziyan was somewhat confused and inexplicably uncomfortable. After chatting with Meng Meng for a while, she learned what had happened just now. Papa, Mama wants to talk to you. Meng Meng handed the phone to Zhang Han beside her. Meng Meng muttered with a guilty conscience, I'm going to play with my toys. Then she began to fiddle with the toys on the sofa. Fortunately, at that time, Wang Yihan shouted excitedly from outside the restaurant, Meng Meng, I've come to play with you. Huh, Yihan? Meng Meng screamed in surprise, then ran over and went to the second floor with Wang Yihan. Wang Jian and Su Yu, who were carrying 2 bags of fruit behind them, greeted Zhang Han and then went to the second floor to look after the 2 kids because they saw Zhang Han on the phone. In fact, Zhang Han gave a wry smile when he answered the phone. Zhang Han, you are so handsome and attractive that your ex-girlfriend also went to the restaurant to see you. Ziyan's laughter was heard through the phone. But Zhang Han shook. At that moment, Wang Jiangwen and his family came over and greeted him. Zhang Han sat in front of the piano and said with a wry smile, the fact of the matter is that on Mount New Moon, Zhang Han explained the whole thing to her in a concise manner. Why did she go to the restaurant? How did she find the restaurant? Her family is in Hong Kong and I can't tell you all the details within a few words. Don't worry, I won't allow her to disturb our life. I only love you and Meng Meng, Zhang Han said sincerely. There was silence on the phone. About 10 seconds later, Xian's whiny voice was heard. You have had girlfriends. Now the first one has appeared, and I don't know if the second one will show up in the future. Absolutely not. Zhang Han said quickly, don't you know my thoughts? I believe you for the moment. Xian snorted and said, I don't care what you used to do, but in the future, I love only you, Zhang Han said in a deep voice. I remember a lot of words you said, although I am no longer beside you. Meng Meng will keep an eye on you. I have to hang up the phone now and go to work. Well, let's talk at night, Zhang Han answered. After hanging up the phone, he found that there was a little sweat on his forehead, as if he had gone through a battle. Certainly. The change of his mind was also due to his care of Xian. Because he cared about her, he tried his best to explain and did not want her to feel depressed. Zhang Han shook his head, planning to go upstairs to accompany Meng Meng. Since Wang Yihan was here, he needed to cook some meat dishes at night. After thinking for a while, he decided to make roast duck, which was relatively convenient. Xiong, go up the mountain and take a few ducks back. Zhang Han glanced at Xiong and said, but Xiong did not give him a response. When he looked closely, he found that he was listening to music with headphones. Zhang Han guessed that he took the initiative to put on the headset when he saw him answering the phone. Zhang Han, therefore, walked over and patted Xiong on his shoulder, telling him what he should do. Okay. Xiong nodded and went out. Zhang Han went to the second floor. On the roadside not far from a waterfall in the suburbs, Teacher Ma and some others were standing around the motorhome. It's been 20 minutes, why hasn't she come out yet? Zif asked in confusion. It doesn't matter, we have a lot of time, don't worry. Teacher Ma smiled. When I finished putting on elder sister Yan's makeup, her phone rang. The woman in charge of makeup said. At that point, Xian, in the motorhome, just hung up the phone. She was a little unhappy. No, he is too gentle. I need to find someone who is fiercer to help him. Xian was a little worried. After thinking for a while, she was suddenly reminded of a person. Lily is qualified. So, she took out her mobile phone and dialed Zhang Li's number. Hello, Lily, your sister-in-law has one thing to bother you about. I need you to go to the restaurant frequently in the next few days. Chapter 385, Malice. Xian and Zhang Li talked for 5 minutes. Zhang Li asked several questions out of curiosity, and Xian told her it was about Zhang Han's ex. Xian was actually a little nervous after speaking it out. Zhang Li had a good relationship with her, but she was Zhang Han's sister. She would certainly be on her brother's side if something did happen. But apart from Zhang Li, Xian found no one else she could tell. So after that, Xian went silent. Obviously, Zhang Li knew Xian's worry. She hesitated, and then she said she would vouch for her brother. Don't worry, I don't care who this ex is. Leave this to me, even if it's just for Meng Meng. I can't let her see something like that. Moreover, you are my sister-in-law. Hearing this, Xian was relieved and she said with a smile, it's not that serious. I believe Zhang Han. I just worry that he and Meng Meng will be disturbed. Haha, I know, you and my brother are so sweet, I can't wait to attend your wedding. After a few words, she hung up the phone. Zhang Li thought for a while and dialed elder brother Long's number. Brother Long, you need to change my 8:30 playing time to 10 o'clock. Oh no, 11 o'clock. I'm kind of busy recently, and for kinking, also help me change her to 11. Elder brother Long would naturally say yes to Zhang Li's requests. In the recreational vehicle, Xian was walking to the door after the call, when she just got up. Her phone rang again. She picked up her phone and saw it was Tang Jie calling. Ziyan answered the phone. Auntie Tang. Xiao Yan, I want to talk to you about something. What's the matter? Recently, I have been telling your Uncle Hong that I still want you to work in his company. You have no relatives to take care of you in the Imperial Dynasty Company. It will be more convenient for you to come here, so we would like to hear your opinion on this. If you agree, we can talk with the people from the Imperial Dynasty Company. If you think it is inconvenient, Auntie Tang will never bring it up again. Tang Jie's words showed her good faith, and Ziyan said nothing. After 5 seconds hesitation, she replied, "That's fine by me, but it may not be so easy to negotiate with them. I signed a full contract." "Ha, it doesn't matter, your Uncle Hong could take care of it." "Oh, okay, I need to go, Auntie Tang, work stuff, others have been waiting for me." "Well then, I'll leave you to work. We can meet after you come back." After hanging up, Ziyan sat in the vehicle for a minute. There was one thing after another, so she was a little upset. She preferred to be in a better state when she worked. After adjusting her mood, she stood up, left the RV, and continued to shoot. It was after 6 in the afternoon. Many people had been lining up in front of the restaurant. A light pink Bentley stopped at the side of the road not far away. Qiao Luo got out of the car and walked over. She looked at the line outside the restaurant and chose to sit down directly. A tall woman in sunglasses sat here, where the chatting around her was much lower. Many men looked over from time to time, and 2 of them couldn't help going forward to chat with her. However, she showed no interest to them, so others gave up trying and just stood in line. It took nearly 50 minutes for Qiao Luo to enter the restaurant. She chose a seat in the corner. Opposite her sat a man with a black beard, which made her frown. She thought to herself that she should have had the driver accompany her. After waiting for a minute, she realized that it was a buffet, so she got up and walked to the kitchen counter. She took some egg fried rice, and then went back to her seat. Xuyong saw her. What's she doing here? Xuyong's were eyes fixed on her. From the counter to her seat, he thought for a while, and finally chose to ignore her. The boss and others were upstairs. If she didn't disturb them, he could pretend that he hadn't seen her. Xuyong shook his head and continued to play with his phone. Liang Hao, Liang Menkai, and others were eating roasted duck at this time. Liang Hao's comment on the food here had always been one word, which was delicious. It was the first time that Qiao Luo ate the egg fried rice here. After taking one bite, she was stunned. The taste of the delicious food released a little of the anger in her. Interesting, a broke young master was forced to earn a living as an exceptional cook. Qiao Luo looked around while having the egg fried rice. She was tempted by the smell of roasted duck. She glanced around. When she saw 2 men sitting by the window on one side of the piano, her eyes were fixed. Isn't that Mr. Sheng of a new technology? He is a member here. At this time, Qiao Luo became a little serious. All members of the restaurant could be useful connections for her. It was just a small restaurant. If only she could get to know some major figures here, her social status would definitely rise. It's perfect. You have a happy life, just like a colorful balloon. However, I will be the one who punctures the balloon for you. It's punishment for abandoning and ignoring me. If you can continue your happy life like nothing happened, I will admire you by then. Women knew women best, just as men know men best. She knew that what she was going to do would put the hostess of this restaurant in an embarrassing situation. Only such punishment could vent her hatred from years ago. Qiao Luo made up her mind to do something. Just then, the restaurant door opened and 3 women came in. Liang Hao saw the people and nodded with a smile. It was the boss's sister, Zhang Li. Zhang Li smiled back and headed for the 2nd floor. Qiao Luo's eyes were fixed on the one behind Zhang Li, Liana. Is she an employee of Daiguangco Limited, and her surname seems to be Li? Qiao Luo was a little confused. She thought for a while and her eyes became brighter. She looked across the table and asked the bearded man in a low voice, "Excuse me, who are those 3 women just walking in?" Why don't they need to wait in line? Who, them? One is the owner's sister, the other two are the sister's friends. Of course, family doesn't have to wait in line. Oh. Qiaoluoluo nodded. Then she went straight to the counter, taking out a stack of money from her bag and putting it on the counter directly. Without counting the money, she just turned around and left. Back to her Bentley. Instead of telling the driver where to go, she took out her card purse, rummaged inside for a while, found a phone number, and dialed it. Boss Liu, this is Qiaoluoluo. I need you to do me a favor. Arrange someone to collect information on the female employees of your company whose surnames are Li and about 24 years old. After the call, she said, go back to Dongyang Pavilion. The car drove to the northern Jiansha district. Halfway there, her cell phone received a message. In the company, 45 female employees had the surname of Li and were about 24 years old. Not a lot of them. Qiaoluoluo glanced briefly at it. Halfway through the list, she finally focused on a picture. Liana. After thinking about it, Qiaoluoluo called Boss Liu again and said, help me make an appointment with your employee Liana for noon tomorrow. Make it for the Blues Tea Room. At 9:30 at night, Wang Yihan left the restaurant reluctantly. The two kids had a good time. After they left, Zhang Li dragged her brother into the master bedroom and closed the door. What's the matter? Why are you so mysterious? Zhang Han found it funny and asked, brother, who came to you today, which ex-girlfriend? Tell me the truth. Zhang Li asked. It's true. Who is it? So shameless. Zhang Li said angrily, brother, your wife told me that she didn't want anyone to disturb you and Meng. Tell you what, you didn't have a real girlfriend before. Don't keep in contact with any of them, and don't try to fool us with the after breaking up, a man and a woman could still be friends bullshit. How could a decent ex find this place? I'm so angry. Who is she? Once I see her, I will definitely scold her. Looking at Zhang Li's indignant expression, Zhang Han found it both funny and annoying. He patted Zhang Li's head lightly and said, you can rest assured that your brother cherishes this family the most. That's good. Zhang Li rolled her eyes and said, you haven't told me who she is. Qiaoluoluo. Her? HMPH. I didn't like her before, she was very hypocritical. Anyway, I will come here in the next few days. Now I start work at 11 p.m. so I have free time. Zhang Li looked at her watch and said, well, okay, then you can be a bodyguard for your brother during these days. Zhang Han chuckled. At this time, Meng's cry came from outside the door, so Zhang Han instantly walked out. At about 10 o'clock, the father and daughter chatted with Xian on video. Because of this, Xian was eager to finish her work as soon as possible, so her work was sped up. At 11 o'clock in the evening, in Liang Mengkai's rental, Chu Hui came in and handed Liang Hao a key to a Cadillac Escalade, laughing. Brother Hao, you can drive this car in Hong Kong, thank you. Liang Hao took the key and smiled. You know me. He knew that he preferred SUVs or off-road vehicles, and this Cadillac suited his taste. Of course, I used to work with you. Chu Hui laughed and said, it's just that I'm busy at this business recently. I don't have much free time during the day. I'll accompany you in a few days. We'll discuss that later when you're free. Liang Hao replied with a smile. It's only 11 o'clock. Shall we go out for a walk? Chu Hui asked. Where to? As Liang Mengkai came out of the bedroom, she asked while eating an apple. How about the Starry Sky Bar? Liang Hao suddenly said. They all became quiet. What? Liang Mengkai widened her eyes and said, why would we go there? Yesterday we already went there and today you want to go again, do you? Like Zhang Li, Luo King? No way, you fell in love with one of them at first sight? What are you thinking? Liang Hao paused and was at a loss whether to cry or laugh. He said, I just thought Zhang Li was very interesting on stage. If you don't want to go, let's go somewhere else. It's rare for you to be interested in anyone. Let's go see Zhang Li. Liang Mengkai said. The group of people went downstairs. Liang Hao drove his Escalade, and Chu Hui drove his Ferrari 458 toward Causeway Bay. During this period, Liang Mengkai asked Liang Hao several times what he felt for Zhang Li. Liang Hao couldn't say anything, but he laughed bitterly. At first, Zhang Li's stubborn temper attracted his attention, then her wild nature on stage made him think of her from time to time, which he found very interesting. It was like there were several internet cafes at the entrance of the university. If you were more interested in the manager of one of them, you would go to that internet cafe more often than the others. It was an attraction. They soon arrived at their destination. Seeing her brother staring at Lilai on stage with great interest, Liang Mengkai curled her lips. She thought, if my brother liked Zhang Li, and they were together, if the boss didn't have a wife and I became the boss's wife, what would everyone's position in the family be? At noon the next day, on Anu Street of the Jianshaw district, Liana looked nervous as she stared at the sign of the Blue Tea Room. Before she came here, she knew that the other person was a major shareholder. Her boss told her to serve her well. After entering, she reported her name and was taken to a quiet seat on the second floor by the window. Nice to meet you, Miss Kiao. Liana smiled and greeted her. Nice to meet you, please take a seat, Kiao Luo replied with a smile. 3 minutes after Liana ordered a drink, it was delivered to her. Kiao Luo didn't say anything during the period, and Liana kept silent and wondered why she wanted to meet with her. Do you know why I wanted to see you? Kiao Luo took her eyes back from the outside street and asked Liana. I don't know. Liana shook her head slightly. Kiao Luo smiled and said, your working ability was good, so I remember you, and yesterday, I saw you in Meng Meng's recreational restaurant. Did Miss Kiao go there for dinner, too? Liana was relaxed and asked with a smile. The food is delicious. I feel the same way, Liana said. Yesterday, I saw you could just get in without getting in line, so I asked around and found that you were very close to the boss's sister. Yes, Lilai and I have lived in a rented house for a long time, and we are very familiar with each other. Anna nodded. Oh, you must know her well. Liana replied and then paused. Miss Kiao, do you know Lilai? Of course, I don't just know Zhang Li. Her brother Zhang Han is an old friend of mine. I found it yesterday by accident, so I wanted to give him a surprise after I saw you yesterday. I may need you to do me a favor. Kiao Luo took a sip of tea and said, no trouble, I am at your service if you need anything. Liana was nervous and she thought of what her boss had said. Miss Kiao in front of her was a character she dared not mess around with. Then I'll just say it directly. You need to go to the restaurant later and get a membership. Take my car. The driver will give you a mobile phone for payment, but don't give away my name. Okay, Liana nodded and said, shall I go now? Go ahead. Oh, by the way, Kiao Luo thought and said, I didn't see Zhang Han's wife. I heard she is on a business trip. Do you know her? I know her. Liana didn't know what Kiao Luo was thinking, so she nodded and told the truth. Who is she? Maybe I know her too. It's elder sister Yan, Ziyan, Liana answered. Boom. Kiao Luo held her tea and paused. She was stunned. It's her. Han Yang, Ziyan, it explains everything. She was thinking, but her face showed a smile. She said, I know her. It seems that I need to prepare more gifts. Go now. The driver will bring you back later. Okay. Liana nodded, turned around, and walked downstairs to a brown Jaguar sports car. It seemed to be getting more and more interesting. Kiao Luo looked out of the window, and there was a sneer in her eyes. Chapter 386, Being Defeated Again. In Meng Meng's recreational restaurant. At 1:30 p.m., there were only 3 or 4 normal eaters. At the VIP diners table sat Xuyong, Sun Dongying, Liang Hao, Liang Mengkai, and Zhao Du. while Yu Qingqing was at work and didn't come at noon. Zhang Han and Meng Meng were on the second floor. On the first floor, Zhang Li, like a door god, sat on the edge of the sofa and glanced at her mobile phone and the door from time to time. Liu Qing sat quietly beside her, wearing headphones and watching a young love TV series on her tablet. Liang Mengkai had finished her lunch and was sipping milk. Sensing her brother's gaze at Zhang Li, Liang Mengkai curled her upper lip and waved at Zhang Li. "Lilai, come and sit for a while." "Why?" Zhang Li got up and went over, sat beside her, and asked, "What's the matter?" Liang Hao glanced at Liang Mengkai. He knew what his weird sister wanted to do. "Why did you come so early today? Don't you come only occasionally in the evening?" asked Liang Mengkai. "I'll come whenever I want, and it's none of your business." Zhang Li took a look at her and said seriously, "I've been quite free recently. I should come every morning and go back to work at 10 o'clock in the evening." "Oh, that's not bad." Liang Mengkai laughed. "You're a little strange. Is there anything wrong?" Zhang Li looked at Liang Mengkai curiously and asked. "Of course." Liang Mengkai rolled her eyes and said frankly, "My brother likes you." Puff! As soon as she said this, Xuyong, who was sitting behind them, almost spewed out a mouthful of beer. "Wow, I didn't expect that the guy who just came here a few days and seemed honest would dare to pursue the boss's sister." Sun Donging beside him was also stunned and began looking around with widened eyes. Zhao Du almost choked on the milk. He covered his mouth with his right hand and looked at Liang Mengkai and Zhang Li. "Huh?" Zhang Li was also stunned. She turned to face Liang Hao and looked him up and down. Just when Liang Hao was smiling and wanted to say something, Zhang Li shook her head in disgust. "Well, I don't like little fresh meat with a pale face and long hair like your brother. He is not my cup of tea." The smile froze on Liang Hao's face. "Little fresh meat? Am I not manly? I was rejected before I had a chance to say anything." "It is so. Liang Hao trembled and forced to smile. "My sister likes to joke." "Oh, I'm joking, too." Zhang Li smiled and said, "You are actually pretty handsome, but you are a little less masculine." "Ha ha, it feels like being friends and—" Liang Hao smiled and shook his head. "Oh." Liang Mengkai patted her chest and said, "You surprised me. My brother is definitely a handsome boy. Your eyes and nose are alike. My brother and I don't look like each other, and it's hard for you to find out that we are family," said Zhang Li. "Your brother is as masculine as a cool soldier. How unlucky it would be if you looked like him." Liang Mengkai joked, and then said, "Last night, my brother wanted to go to the Starry Sky Bar to see you." "Really?" Zhang Li looked at Liang Hao again and asked, "Do you like going to bars?" "Not particularly." Liang Hao nodded and said with a smile, "You are very personable and likable, so I went to that bar to learn more about you. Your DJ skills were so good that you were livening everyone up." "Of course, I'm the #1 DJ of the Starry Sky Bar," Zhang Li said proudly. "Mention my name the next time you go to Starry Sky Bar, and someone will arrange a good table for you." "Well, I'll try next time." Liang Hao smiled and said, "How long have you been a DJ?" 4 years. I've always liked it." Zhang Li thought about it and then replied, "You have learned so well in only 4 years. It seems that you are very talented in this field." Liang Hao said with a smile. "Really? Actually I'm not talented. Those famous DJ masters like Hu Jianlong are really worth admiring." Zhang Li shook her head. When talking about Hu Jianlong, there was a look of longing in her eyes. Hu Jianlong was a famous DJ master in China. He had released many popular singles and won lots of awards, which was the goal of many insiders. "You are too modest. Hu Jianlong has been working in this field for more than 10 years. If you can hold on as long as he does, you may become him." Liang Hao chuckled. "Easier said than done. Thank you for your encouragement. I will try my best." Zhang Li made a gesture to Liang Hao. While they were talking, Liang Mengkai stared at Liang Hao for a while and at Zhang Li for another while. and found that she couldn't get a word in at all. Finally, her eyes fixed on her brother. How could he become so talkative? He would not really like Lili, would he? It was interesting. This brother and sister pair had fallen in love with the other pair. What a pity, that brother had already gotten married. Just when Liang Mengkai wanted to say something, Zhang Li suddenly stood up and looked at the door. Anna, aren't you at work? Why are you here now? Lily, you are here? I'm here to apply for a membership card for my boss. After she came to dinner last time, she was full of praise for all the dishes here. She is too busy now to apply for the card in the flesh, and asked me to do her a favor. Liana replied, membership card, I'll get you a card. Hearing this, Xuanhuan quickly stood up and went to the counter with a laptop. He took out his bank card and said, you can transfer now. Okay. Annalie picked up her mobile phone and clicked onto the transfer page and entered her bank card number and password. The transfer was successful. This is the 18th membership card, so there are only 2 cards left. Xuanhuan handed the membership card to Annalie and asked, do you know the specific information of your boss? I'll take a note. Well, this. Liana was stunned and shook her head. I don't know the specific information either. Please record it when she comes next time. Okay. Xuanhuan nodded and walked back to where he was just sitting. Lili, will you go back later? Liana looked at Zhang Li and said, no, I'm still going back after 12 p.m. Zhang Li replied, I see, I'll go back to work now. Okay, see you. See you. Liana waved to them and walked out. Liang Hao, Liang Mengkai, and Zhao Du sat for another 20 minutes, and most of the time, Liang Hao was chatting with Zhang Li. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, they left the restaurant, and Zhao Du walked to the place where Yu Qingqing worked. Liang Hao and Liang Mengkai got in that escalade. Brother, are you really in love with Lili? Liang Mengkai stared at Liang Hao and asked, why do you say that? Liang Hao started the car and smiled. Intuitively, I know you very well, said Liang Mengkai. Hearing this, Liang Hao was silent for 10 seconds, as if he was seriously thinking about it. At last, he nodded and said, at present, she is very attractive to me. She is frank, personal, real, and not hypocritical, but I don't know if I like her or have fallen in love with her. In a word, I feel comfortable with her, and I have never met such a girl in the past few years. Don't you like Xian? Liang Mengkai asked, full of doubt. Your mind is changing so quickly. I used to believe that I liked Xian, but I didn't feel very sad when I heard that she was married and had children. Maybe I didn't love her, and I was just attracted to her when I was young. But Zhang Li gives me a different feeling. If your brother really fell in love with her, would you mind it? Liang Hao smiled and asked casually. This, what can I say? But she's not interested in you. Don't be too confident and believe that she will promise you as long as you like her. Liang Mengkai said mercilessly. All right. Liang Hao forced a smile. On the way back, he was silent for a while, and finally uttered a sentence. Mengkai, which barber shop do you usually go to? My hair is too long and I want to shorten it. Why, what's the matter with you? Soon after, Liana took a special car back to the Blues tea room and went to the 2nd floor. Miss Kiao, this is the membership card. Liana carefully took out the diamond-inlaid membership card from her purse and handed it to Kiao Luo. Well, go back and tell your supervisor that your bonus is double this month. Kiao Luo waved to her. Thank you, Miss Kiao. Anna nodded happily and said, well, if Miss Kiao doesn't, you can go now, Kiao Luo said directly. Okay. Liana turned and left. Kiao Luo picked up the membership card and took a glance at it before casually putting it into her purse, then she left the Blues tea room. At 6:30 p.m., there were more than 30 diners in line, and all the members had arrived. The meal had just been prepared, and it was time for the members to line up for dinner. A light pink Bentley again stopped in a parking spot in front of the restaurant. Kiao Luo, dressed in casual clothes, got out of the car and went straight to the restaurant, followed by a man in a suit. Some people beside recognized her and began to whisper, "Isn't she the beauty who stood in line with me yesterday? She arrived in a Bentley and went straight to the restaurant. Is she, hiss, is she the 18th member? She's so rich. There are only 2 membership cards left in the restaurant. We don't understand the world of the rich." Under the murmur of the diners, the 2 entered the restaurant. After handing the membership card to her subordinate and asking him to wait for dinner, Kiao Luo glanced around and finally walked over to a small dining table near the piano. "Miss Lin." Kiao Luo stopped at the dinner table, looked at Lin Xu, and said with a smile, "Long time no see. Hello, Miss Kiao." Lin Xu stood up and shook hands with her. In terms of identity, the Kiao family was the most influential family in Hong Kong, which was not comparable to the Lin family. Therefore, although Lin Xu had met Kiao Luo several times, they were not familiar with each other. "Mind if I sit here?" Kiao Luo pointed to the seat in front of Lin Xu. "Of course not, please take a seat," Lin Xu replied with a smile. "She is the new member." Lin Xu realized. When Lin Xu was about to say something, Kiao Luo turned around and looked back at the man in beige casual clothes, saying hello in a sweet and smarmy way. "Hello, Mr. Sheng, I'm Kiao Luo from the Kiao family. I didn't expect to meet you here. We'd be very honored if Mr. Sheng has time to visit the Kiao family." "Mr. Sheng?" Lin Xu was surprised and looked at the man carefully, her pupils slightly constricted. "Mr. Sheng of a new technology? Why is he here?" Although she was shocked, Kiao Luo had already said hello, and she could not be indifferent, so she stood up and said with a smile, "Hello, Mr. Sheng, I'm Lin Xu from the Lin Group. I'd like to invite Mr. Sheng to the Lin Group if I have a chance." Mr. Sheng behind them smiled and nodded in response to the 2 women without saying anything. The subordinate, who was in charge of the meal for Kiao Luo, came with her dinner, set it on the table, and left. Kiao Luo and Lin Xu began to eat and chatted in low voices occasionally. Xuyong watched the whole process and felt a little headache. It was Kiao Luo who bought the member card. Should I go upstairs and report it to the boss right away? Xuyong was hesitating. He thought over and over again and decided to wait for the boss to finish his meal. Otherwise, the boss would be disappointed by the bad news if he went upstairs and reported it now. Moreover, so many members and diners were here, and the boss would be disgraced if something went wrong. But he didn't know that Zhang Han never cared about other people's judgment. When Xuyong finished eating, had a rest for 5 minutes, and was ready to go upstairs, he saw Zhang Li and Luo King come down from the 2nd floor. Just as Zhang Li sat down on the sofa, she noticed the newcomer. Zhang Li's eyes widened as she got up and went over to Kiao Luo. "Why is there one more person? Are you a member, lady?" Zhang Li said, looking at Kiao Luo in a strange way. Her words immediately attracted the attention of others in the restaurant. Liang Hao turned to look at them, feeling that Zhang Li was aiming at that woman. Did they know each other? Otherwise, it would be inappropriate for Zhang Li to do so. He was a little confused, but soon figured out the reason. Of course. Kiao Luo took out the membership card from her purse, shook it in front of Zhang Li, and said, "I'm a member here. You got a membership card?" Zhang Li frowned, took out her cell phone, and called Li Anna. "Anna, did you help Kiao get a membership card?" "Yes, Miss Kiao is a shareholder of our company." "I see." Zhang Li hung up the phone, looked at Kiao Luo angrily, and said, "How can you get the membership card in this way? Why can't I understand what you're talking about? I'm busy during the day, and thus asked my staff to help me with the membership card. What's wrong with that?" Kiao Luo gave her a puzzled look. Some ordinary diners began to whisper in support of Miss Luo, as if the restaurant was bullying customers. Even Mr. Sheng was looking at them curiously. Kiao Luo's smile brightened when she noticed the situation. Zhang Li became even more angry and she said, Why are you here? You are not welcome here. Sister, I'm here for dinner as a member. If you don't welcome me, why didn't you tell me earlier when I was not a member? Qiaoluoluo smiled inexplicably. You. Listening to the whispers around, Zhang Li was at a loss. Qiaoluoluo was now a member, and driving her out would bring gossip to the restaurant. Who do you call sister? Who is your sister? Do I know you well? Wait here. Zhang Li glared at her severely, turned around, and hurried to the second floor. It surprised everyone around. Even two members who were just about to leave stopped to watch the bustle. This was the first time that this kind of thing had happened here. Many people looked at the stairway, wondering if the boss would come down in person. They didn't know if the boss, who had always been indifferent, would be angry this time. And, who was this woman? What was their relationship? The members were more curious about this. Soon after, a figure came out of the corner of the stairs. The crowd turned their gaze to the comer. It was the boss. Zhang Han was calm as usual, but it could be seen that there was less gentleness and more indifference on the boss. He went to the door step by step. At this time, everyone, including Mr. Sheng, was looking at the boss. But they were all ignored by the boss. Zhang Han went straight to the table of Qiaoluoluo, and looked at her quietly, without saying anything first. The restaurant fell into a dead silence. Qiaoluoluo blinked and looked at Zhang Han, but she was defeated in less than 10 seconds. What do you want to do standing here? She asked. Zhang Han didn't answer, and the restaurant fell silent again. 1 second, 2 seconds, 10 seconds. As time went on, Qiaoluoluo couldn't keep smiling. Zhang Han suddenly spoke in a low and indifferent voice. This is the second time, don't do it again. I'm not very patient. As a member of the restaurant, can't I come here for dinner? Qiaoluoluo said, paying attention to the expressions of the people around her. Then she raised the membership card in her hand and complained, there are rules in your restaurant, and I was eating in accordance with them. It was someone from your restaurant who disturbed me, and I even haven't gotten a chance to say anything yet. She was acting like an innocent victim and waiting for Zhang Han's explanation to all the guests, including Mr. Sheng here. She believed that Zhang Han would take the overall situation into consideration and put up with her, and she enjoyed seeing him in this dilemma. However, she was overconfident. Only those I approve will be admitted as members. Zhang Han released a little master's aura, frowned slightly and said, stop your wishful thinking. This is your second and last chance. Don't show up in front of me after this meal. Zhang Han's gaze made Qiaoluoluo feel inexplicably frightened and flustered. She lowered her head and said, since you don't welcome me, that's all. Hearing this, Zhang Han turned around and left for the second floor. The restaurant remained silent. Liang Hao went blank in surprise. That aura just now seemed to belong to a warrior. Was the boss a warrior as well? He was confused by the fleeting aura. While Liang Hao didn't have enough strength to make an accurate judgment, the man sitting face to face with Mr. Sheng lost countenance and whispered to Mr. Sheng, he is better than me. At that moment, he felt great pressure. Obviously, the restaurant owner was not just an ordinary cook. Oh? Mr. Sheng gave him a strange look, and then shook his head without making any comment. In fact, he was sighing with emotion in his mind. Sure enough, masters with ability liked to hide themselves in the noisy crowd of the city. Qiaoluoluo lowered her head, and her eyes were full of anger. She was again defeated for a second time. Why was he so calm? How dare he say that? Why did the diners around him echo his words with their expressions and feel that all of that was justified? Qiaoluoluo clenched her teeth so hard that she didn't even want to finish the dinner. She couldn't stay any more. A few seconds later, she picked up her purse and escaped from the restaurant. Chapter 387, The Name of the Boss's Wife. Qiaoluoluo went into the back seat of her car and threw her handbag on the seat impatiently. The driver was frightened and his palm was trembling slightly. But he only dared to observe through the rear-view mirror. Qiaoluoluo took a few deep breaths. She couldn't understand why Zhang Han was so domineering even in front of the public. She felt like she had just shot herself in the foot. Behind her sat Mr. Sheng, in front of her was Lin X, the princess of the Lin group, and beside her stood many members with status. She was afraid of disgracing the Qiao family in front of so many celebrities, so she didn't, and dared not say anything more. This made her very aggrieved. After 3 minutes of silence with her eyes closed, she suddenly opened her eyes, looked at the driver, and ordered, "Contact the Royal Entertainment Company, I want Xian's private phone number." Thinking of this, Qiao Luo perked up and felt like she had found a breakthrough. However, at about 9:30 p.m., when Qiao Luo went back to her own residence, Xian's personal number had been sent to her mobile phone. Standing in front of the bedroom window on the second floor of the villa, she opened the door and went to the open balcony. Leaning on the white guardrail, she pondered for 2 minutes and dialed Xian's phone number. Doot, doot, doot. After the phone rang 3 times, it was connected and a pleasant voice was heard. "Hello. Hello, Xian. I'm Qiao Luo of the Qiao family of Hong Kong. You should have heard about me from Zhang Han," Qiao Luo said in a soft voice, sneering silently. There was a sudden silence over the phone, but 3 seconds later, she again heard Xian's voice, which sounded a little more insipid than the first hello. "Well, I don't know you, and my husband has never mentioned you before. Haven't you heard of me?" Qiao Luo pretended to be confused and asked, "It's unreasonable. I dated Zhang Han for a long time. If it wasn't for something, we might have been married now. Ouch, I'm so removed. I'm sorry, I didn't mean anything. After all, we are still friends after breaking up." "I see." Xian's voice was still calm, as if she were talking about something unrelated to herself. "You may be thinking too much. My husband never told me about these messy things." "Oh, yes, he did. I remember him saying that he hadn't had a girlfriend seriously before, or had no serious girlfriend before. I can't remember it very well." "Oh, I've said too much. Don't be angry, Miss Qiao, since I don't mean anything. I've been working for a long time and I'm not in good spirits. Don't mind it if I said something that should not be heard." Qiao Luo stared at something in the air, frowning, but still smiling. "It doesn't matter. You must be busy as a superstar and can't take care of your family all the time. I've talked with Zhang Han several times recently, and I'm very pleased with his current situation. I wish you all the best. By the way, your daughter is cute and beautiful, and I wonder could I be her godmother?" The topic turned to Meng, which made Xian's tone less friendly. "That's not necessary. I won't agree with you, nor will Zhang Han. We are very happy now. You may have heard that the fireworks bloomed all night in the sky over New Moon Bay not long ago. That day was our anniversary, and on the same day next year, if you are in Hong Kong, you can look up and enjoy it." "Really? That's really good." When I was talking with Zhang Han recently, he also said, Qiao Luo was good at this kind of debate with words, just like the business war. Step by step, she would find Xian's flaw in the end. However, she was interrupted by Xian. "Miss Qiao, it's very impolite to lie. You may have talked to him in your dream, but now you don't seem to be sleepwalking. I'm kind enough to call you and wish you the best, but you seem to be prejudiced against me," said Qiao Luo. Her face darkened. "But I don't need your wishes. I don't even know who you are, okay? You're calling me now because you just went to the restaurant and lost face in front of Zhang Han, right? Do you want to vent your displeasure?" Xian's ridicule could be heard over the phone. "You don't really know him. He won't be gentle to anyone except Meng and me. Do you want to get revenge on me since he embarrassed you? You seem to think too much. You're not as good looking as me, and your voice is not as pleasant as mine. Are you jealous of me? I don't want to know. I have no interest in you. You want to break through by using me and influence our family? Sorry, you can't do it. Don't call me again, because your eloquence is not as good as mine. Now I'll give you a chance to speak. Is there anything else? I can talk to you for another minute. Kaboom. Qiao Luo's facial expression seemed unnatural, for Xian's words made her confused. Especially the last sentence, although Xian seemed to be giving Qiao Luo a chance to talk, it actually reminded Qiao Luo of Zhang Han's harsh words in the restaurant and the suspicious eyes of the other diners. Qiao Luo was completely enraged, but there was no reason for her to vent her anger. Suddenly, she hung up and smashed her cell phone on the ground. She thought she had found a breakthrough, but she was the one who lost in the end. Breathing quickly, Xiao was mad, with her eyes opened widely. Then she ran back to her room and took out an old-fashioned mobile phone from the storage room at the innermost side of the second floor. Xian, I admit I look down on you, but you look down on me too. Qiao Luo sneered, hurried back to her bedroom, and dialed a phone number. Contact the best post producer in Hong Kong, have him come to my house tomorrow. On the other side, Xian was sitting by the bed of the hotel bedroom in her pajamas. After hanging up, she was breathing quickly and tried to calm herself. No one could be in a good mood to receive such a provocative call. Xian put her mobile phone beside her bed, got up, and walked out of her bedroom. She saw Ziffa playing with her laptop in the living room. Sister Yan, there are 2 TV plays that want to use for our work as the theme song. I just heard that the company is discussing it, but it hasn't been settled yet because Uncle Hong is busy with the cancellation of the contract. Ziffa looked at Xian and said. Xian nodded softly. Instead of asking more about it, she said, Fei, contact Teacher Ma later and ask him to speed up the shooting. Huh? Didn't we just talk about speeding up this afternoon? If we went faster, wouldn't you be too tired? Zif asked. Let Teacher Ma arrange it. Xian waved her hand and turned to walk into the bedroom. She closed the door and lay on the bed. After a few minutes of silence, she picked up her mobile phone, dialed Zhang Han's number, and spoke in a voice with a trace of grievance. Zhang Han, I'm not happy. What can I do if my daughter's mother is not happy? Comfort her. Therefore, Zhang Han started a half-hour-long phone call, and finally made Xian feel better. That's it, I'm going to be very busy these days, for I want to come home as early as possible, said Xian. Okay, I'll wait for you. Zhang Han frowned slightly after the phone was hung up. He could feel that it might be Qiao Luo's fault again. Now that Zhang Han had given her a last chance, he would take action if he was bothered once more. But over the next 3 days, Qiao Luo didn't show up. Life had returned to its normal warmth and plainness. Interestingly, when Liang Hao appeared in front of the crowd again, his long hair had been changed into being only an inch long, which was very short. Though it was not a popular hairstyle, it made him look more energetic and less like little fresh meat. Seeing that Liang Hao had cut his hair so obediently, Zhang Li was a little puzzled. However, although Liang Hao's appearance became more pleasing to the eye, he was still relatively gentle and not manly, which made him not as charming as Zhao Feng in Zhang Li's opinion. However, Liang Hao came to the restaurant more frequently than Liang Menkai, so he often had a chance to chat with Zhang Li, and they gradually became familiar with each other. Zhang Li enjoyed being accompanied by Liang Hao. After all, she stayed in the restaurant all day and easily got bored. Liang Hao came here every day and occasionally went out for a walk with her, which colored her boring daily life. Noticing that the handsome Liang was obviously attracted to Lilai, Liu King often snickered beside them, and even Liang Menkai could feel the change in their relationship. As a sister, Liang Menkai knew Liang Hao better, since her brother was no longer young, and it was time for him to get married. Liang Menkai hoped he could find her a sister-in-law. However, she would feel a bit awkward if Zhang Li were to become her sister-in-law. After all, she liked Zhang Li's brother and wanted to pursue him. Later, when Zhang Li told Liang Menkai that she liked Zhao Feng's type and was not interested in her brother, Liang Menkai couldn't help looking at Zhang Li in surprise and confusion. Zhao Feng, that Zhao Feng, who always looked for opportunities to chat with her. Then she looked at her brother blankly, feeling that there was a love triangle here. Did it mean that for the sake of her brother's happiness, she should promise Zhao Feng first? No, Zhao Feng was not her cup of tea. Are you 24, Lili? Asked Liang Mengkai. Yes, Zhang Li replied. Let's go back to the restaurant first. My brother and I will stay in the restaurant this afternoon. Liang Mengkai shook her head. It was 2:30 p.m., and Liang Mengkai and Liang Hao, as well as Zhang Li and Liu Qing, had just gone out for a walk. Now they were walking to the restaurant, which was about 500 meters away. Lili, are we friends? Liang Mengkai said suddenly. Yes. Zhang Li nodded and felt a little strange. If they were not friends, who would go shopping with Liang Mengkai? Then tell me who the boss's wife is. I don't know her name yet, said Liang Mengkai curiously. My sister-in-law's name? You must know her. Liu Qing covered her mouth and smiled. I know her. Who is she? Liang Mengkai's eyes widened. Even Liang Hao was a little curious. Meng was so cute and beautiful, which must be attributed to her mother's genes. Such an angel-like girl couldn't be born by ordinary people. Then I'll tell you, her name is, guess? Zhang Li said with a smile, rolling her eyes slyly. Oh, Lili, hurry up. Liang Mengkai grabbed Zhang Li's arm and shook it a few times. Well, listen. After a few laughs, Zhang Li said, you must have heard of my sister-in-law. She is Xian, a superstar. Huh? Liang Mengkai let out an exclamation and was stunned. Who, Xian? Liang Hao was a little confused. Looking at Zhang Li, he asked, are you sure? It's true, of course. Didn't you notice the pictures in the restaurant? There are also photos of her on the wall. You are so stupid, said Zhang Li with her mouth curled. Wow, Xian, my brother and Xian are good friends, Liang Mengkai said in surprise. Do you know each other? Zhang Li was stunned and looked at Liang Hao. Yeah, what a coincidence. Liang Hao forced a smile, took out his cell phone, and dialed Xian's phone number directly. Hello, Xian, I think I've already experienced your husband's cooking skills. What a coincidence. Your daughter is very lovely. Xian was busy, so Liang Hao made a simple explanation and hung up. You know my sister-in-law. Have you ever pursued my sister-in-law? Zhang Li asked, staring at Liang Hao. No, I haven't pursued anyone before. Liang Hao shook his head. Liang Hao was so addicted to martial arts that he didn't have time to date girls until now. Knowing he was close to the stage of Chi Strength Master, he thought it was time to find a girlfriend. Oh, it doesn't matter if you have pursued her. Anyway, I don't think my sister-in-law will like your little fresh meat, Zhang Li's answered. Liang Hao's expression stiffened. No one had denied and criticized him like this in many years, but he still liked to come here and listen to Zhang Li's sarcasm, which was actually not harsh. He felt that it was a little interesting. Liang Hao didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He looked at Zhang Li and said, I've cut my hair short. Do I still look like little fresh meat? Yes. Zhang Li nodded approvingly. When we get to know each other, you will know that I am a real man. Liang Hao retorted politely. Who cares, since you know my sister-in-law? Tell me something about her, Zhang Li said. Well, she is the legitimate daughter of the Zi family of Singapore, and the most beautiful girl in the young generation. Her wish to be a star was opposed by her family, who even wanted to marry her to other families to consolidate the relationship. So she came to Hong Kong to fight for her own. On the way back to the restaurant, Zhang Li got to know something about Xian through the simple chat. They went back to the restaurant and saw Zhang Han and Meng sitting on the sofa watching cartoons. Brother, Liang Hao and my sister-in-law are friends. They have known each other for a long time, but I didn't know it until today. Zhang Li ran up to Zhang Han and said. Zhang Han turned his head, glanced at Liang Hao, and gave him a slight nod. Liang Hao also went to the side of the sofa, reached out his hand and said, Hello, Mr. Zhang, let me introduce myself formally. My name is Liang Hao, like Xian. I grew up in Singapore, too. I see. Zhang Han shook hands with him. Before I came here, Xian told me that she had a husband who was very good at cooking, but I didn't expect you to be so great, Liang Hao said with a smile. You. When Zhang Han was about to say something, the door of the restaurant was opened, and a man in a suit walked in quickly. Hello, Mr. Zhang, this is for you. He handed over a card. Zhang Han took the card and unfolded it. If you don't want to be disturbed again, come to room number 36 by the window on the second floor of the Ruxin Hotel. Let's talk about it for the last time, and this is my bottom line. Who asked you to come? Is it that Giao? Zhang Li stared at the man in the suit. The man in the suit smiled and said nothing. Brother, I will go with you. What else does she dare to do? Said Zhang Li disdainfully. I'm sorry, only Mr. Zhang is invited to go there alone. Miss Giao won't show up if there are other people present, the messenger said with a smile. Liang Mengkai and Liang Hao went back to their usual seats and sat down, looking at this side curiously. Even Meng gave up the cartoon for a while. She mumbled to Zhang Han, Papa, what is it? Are we going out to play? No. Zhang Han smiled and shook his head. As his fingers moved, the card made an arc in the air and fell into the garbage can in front of him. Zhang Han made it clear that he wouldn't care about it. Seeing this, the messenger smiled and said, Mr. Zhang, I don't know if Miss Z has told you anything. Miss Giao has contacted her a few days ago, and you'd better go and have a look if you want to put things right once and for all. Zhang Han frowned and looked at the man in the suit. Shame on her, Zhang Li said angrily. Even my worldview has been refreshed by her. Brother, go straight to her and make it clear. Tell her not to show up shamelessly in front of us. Zhang Han nodded, stood up, looked at Meng and said, Meng, play with Aunt Lili for a while. Dad will go out and come back in a short time. Well. Okay, Papa, hurry up. Meng nodded obediently. Zhang Han stepped out of the restaurant. Mr. Zhang, would you like to take my car? The suited man went to the light pink Bentley and asked, lead the way. Zhang Han responded indifferently and got in his panda car. The man in the suit got in his car and drove away from the restaurant. The Ruxin Hotel was right in New Moon Bay, but the suited man went around a few more blocks while checking the time. At 2:50 p.m., the two cars finally arrived at the entrance of the Ruxin Hotel. The Ruxin Hotel was a 5-star hotel covering a large area. When Zhang Han got out of the car and walked directly to the hotel, the suited man in the Bentley took out a camera and took several pictures of Zhang Han's back from afar. Then he handed the camera to a middle-aged man in the back seat and said, organize the photos and deal with them quickly. The other half will be paid to your account. Okay. The middle-aged man excitedly took the camera, put it aside, and began to operate his laptop. Zhang Han went to the second floor, looked around, and saw Giao Luo sitting in the corner by the window. He went straight over to her, sat down, and looked at her without expression. It seemed that Giao Luo didn't want to start the conversation. Instead, she was looking at Zhang Han with a meaningful smile. 2 minutes, Zhang Han said dryly. You are so indifferent and cool now. You used to be very enthusiastic and generous, especially to me, said Giao Luo with a smile. Don't talk to me about the past. Zhang Han interrupted her. You are not my first one, but I have the last one. Don't disturb my life anymore, since I am not very patient. Since you can find out my address and Xian's personal phone number, you can also find out more information. Don't trouble yourself or the Giao family. I don't like trouble. If you disturb me again, I will solve it once and for all. That's it. Think about it for yourself. Leaving Giao Luo no chance to speak, Zhang Han finished what he wanted to say and stood up. He didn't touch the cup of tea on the table. Chapter 388, finally back. When Zhang Han was about to leave, Giao Luo frowned slightly and said, Didn't you say you'd give me 2 minutes? Only 20 seconds have passed. But I don't want to listen to you now. Zhang Han turned directly. Really? You are so indifferent and heartless now. With a faint sneer hanging on her lips, Qiao Luo calmly watched Zhang Han walk out. 1 step, 2 steps. When Zhang Han took the 5th step, ding! Zhang Han's mobile phone rang. Qiao Luo's sneer was more obvious. Then she picked up her handbag and was ready to leave. Hearing the phone, Zhang Han stopped and took out his cell phone to have a look. It was from Xian. Zhang Han answered the phone and heard Xian's voice before he could speak. This time, he heard her grievance, disappointment, sadness, and weeping voice. Where are you? Zhang Han went blank, sensing Xian's terrible mood. Where are you? Another question with a crying voice came. I'm outside. What's wrong with you? Before Zhang Han finished speaking, Qiao Luo walked by him lightly, holding her mobile phone and pretending to send a WeChat message. Honey, I'm coming, she said in a coquettish voice. Then she put down her cell phone and left. Just as Zhang Han was about to go on, the phone was hung up. It was very unusual. Zhang Han frowned and looked at the back of Qiao Luo coming out of the drink shop. He sensed a hint of conspiracy. But he was too worried about Xian to think about it. When he was about to call Xian again, he heard the WeChat prompt. It was a series of text messages from Xian. Send me your location. Send me your location. Send me your location. What's the matter with you? Shall I call you? Zhang Han sent a voice message. But Xian still replied. I want your location. Send your location now. Seeing this, Zhang Han finally sent his location to Xian. He then sent a message. What happened? Shall we call? After sending the message, Zhang Han called Xian directly, but, sorry, the subscriber you dialed is powered off, sorry. Zhang Han's heart sank at that emotionless mechanical reply. He hurried downstairs, got in the panda car, and went straight back to the restaurant. During this period, he tried to call Xian several times, but her cell phone was never turned on again. At the door of the restaurant, Zhang Han called Zuf first without even getting out of the car. But no matter how he dialed, no one answered. At this time, Zhang Han had already felt something wrong. He called Zhao Feng and was finally connected. However, Zhao Feng told him, "What did you say?" Zhang Han's pupils gradually contracted. Half an hour before, Xian and the other staff were resting in the farmyard at the foot of Mount Maple. They started shooting at 6 o'clock in the morning and arrived here at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. After the late lunch, they planned to have a rest and went to the mountain to look around at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. There were 2 rows of clean houses in the farmyard, just like villas in the mountains. Xian and Zif shared the bedroom of a house. Zif was lying on the bed. Xian was sitting in a rocking chair, and some of the others were also resting in the room or in the pavilion in the yard. With sufficient funds this time, the crew was very generous with the rest of the conditions and the treatment of the staff. Xian was lying in a rocking chair, reading Weibo on her mobile phone. Finding that she had more than 20 million followers now, Xian was crooning with joy. Ding, ding. All of a sudden, a series of information prompts sounded. Xian was surprised and clicked open the first message. A picture was attached below. This was a picture taken in a romantically themed room of a hotel. The room with its curtains drawn was a little dim, and the pink light was faintly illuminating the scene inside. Qiao Luo was leaning on the bed in a disheveled way, and from the reflection of the bedboard, Xian saw a man taking this photo with his mobile phone. Although the man's face couldn't be seen clearly, his figure and face shape were very similar to Zhang Han's. At the bottom of the picture, there was another sentence, "Keep watching if you are brave enough." Is she out of her mind? Xian felt so angry. Wasn't it just to disgust her? She clicked on the second message. It was a picture taken outside of the hotel. In the picture, there was an image of the back of Zhang Han walking in the panda car. In the lower left corner, There was a timestamp, October 2nd, 14th:38:33. The timestamp did not show the year. This screenshot seemed to be taken from the original photo. Seeing this picture, Zhan frowned. He went to this place called Ruxin Hotel. What did he do? She continued to check the following photos. The following two were pictures of Zhang Han getting out of the car, and the rest were all taken in the hotel room. 14:46 and 51 seconds. In the dark room, Zhan saw the front of Zhang Han, who was lowering his head and taking off his clothes. 14:47 and 32 seconds. Some clothes were scattered on the ground. There were more than 10 photos. Each picture made Zhan's face darker, especially the last few, which made Zhan feel aggrieved and uncomfortable. Obviously, this series of photos was telling Zhan that Zhang Han had gone to have a tryst with Qiao Luo. These must be fake. These must be faked pictures. I don't believe it. Zhang Han couldn't have done that. However, the following was a video message. The camera was aimed at the bedside, and she could see 4 feet. It was an ordinary video, but suddenly a deep and urgent voice came out, which made Zhan feel sick again. "Honey, I miss you so much." That voice. It's Zhang Han's voice. No. It's impossible. It must be fake. The discovery made Zhan panic and turn pale. She looked at Zif, who was lying on the bed playing with her mobile phone, and said in a trembling voice, "Fei, go call the art designer." Huh? Zif turned around and was surprised by Zhan, who was pale. She quickly sat up and asked, "What's wrong with you, Sister Yan? Are you not feeling well? Have you been too tired recently? Go call the art designer, please be quick," Zhan said in a hurry. Okay. Zif thought there was something urgent and rushed out to call the art designer of the camera crew. When the art designer walked into the bedroom with a laptop, Zif was about to follow him but was pushed out by Zhan, who was barely smiling and asked her to wait for a while. Then the bedroom door closed. "Teacher, I'll send you 3 photos, tell me if they are fake." After receiving the photos, the art designer began dealing with them on her laptop. Zhan gradually held her breath. These must be fake. They can't be real. That woman wants to influence me with such a filthy trick. You can't defeat me with these fake things. The art designer turned her head and said with a smile, "These photos have not been processed, and they are all real, cut from the original negatives. Usually, you can find the year on the watermark, but the processing level of these photos is not good, and the year is also cut out." Kaboom! The designer's words were like a thunderbolt out of a clear sky, and Zhan's mind went totally blank. She didn't even hear the designer's next words. It's real, it's real. The picture is real. It's impossible. I'll call him. Zhan quickly picked up her mobile phone. She remembered that the art designer had not left yet, but there was no smile on her pale face, for she could not even fake a smile now. "Thank you, teacher. Go out now and close the door for me. Please." "Okay." The art designer looked at Zhan and couldn't help saying, "Sister Zhan, if you are too tired, you can take a rest." Then she turned, went out, and closed the door. "What's the matter? What's up?" Zif asked in a hurry. "Nothing serious. Sister Zhan asked me to check the authenticity of some photos." "Oh, what pictures?" "Maybe at the door and in the hotel. There are only 3 of them, but I can't remember clearly." With that, the art designer smiled and then left. "Photos? That's strange." Zif murmured, full of doubt. Zhao Feng, Leng Yi, and 4 other people were sitting on the other side of the hall. At this time, they also turned to look at Zif. They wondered why she didn't go in when she stood at the door. But they didn't think much about it. In the bedroom, with a pale face and red eyes, Zhan was murmuring to herself in a sad voice, "It's all fake, she's lying to me, she's lying to me." As she said that, she deleted all the photos. Then she quickly dialed Zhang Han's number. While listening to the busy tone, she got very anxious. Soon after, the phone was connected, and she asked with sadness and tears, "Where are you? Yes, where are you? You must be in the restaurant, right? Tell me you're in the restaurant. Tell me you're in the restaurant." However, when she heard the voice say, "Honey, I'm coming," Xian's face turned pale again. She clicked open WeChat and saw the location information sent by Zhang Han as well as the logo of the Ruxin Hotel. Kaboom! At this moment, something seemed to have broken. It was her heart. Fake, fake, it's fake. Xian didn't want to believe it. She turned off her cell phone in a daze, afraid that the phone would ring, afraid to receive such a message again. Xian, who received a provocative call from Qiaoluoluo the other day and was able to fight back strongly, was now in a state of mental breakdown. Her tears kept running down, and she felt like she had lost her soul. This sad feeling suffocated her. She staggered to the door and opened it. She cried and announced, "Stop. I quit. Back to Hong Kong. I want to go back. Book a ticket now, I want to go back." Bang! The door was closed, locked, and a cry of pain came from the room. Boom! All the people in the hall were shocked. Zif was confused. She had never seen Sister Yan crying like a child. Zhao Feng, Leng Yi, and the others hurriedly stood up. "What's the matter? What happened?" Zhao Feng ran up to Zif and asked, "I don't know either." Zif knocked on the door anxiously. Sister Yan, open the door. What's wrong with you, Sister Yan?" However, the room fell into silence. Zif put her head on the door and heard a suppressed cry. It seemed that Xian had covered her mouth with a pillow. In addition, Zif heard the sound of her cell phone left in the room. "What's the matter?" Leng Yu also said anxiously. Everything was going well just now. She was in a good mood at the dinner table. I don't know, by the way, she just met with the art designer," Zif said in a hurry. Whoosh! Zhao Feng rushed out and found the art designer. He asked in a hurry, "What happened when you were in the room?" "Huh? Sister Xian asked me to judge whether or not 3 photos were real." "What photos? What are they?" Zhao Feng asked eagerly. The details told by the art designer made Zhao Feng's heart sink. Was that man his master? This guess made Zhao Feng feel powerless and helpless. Teacher Ma and other members of the team were also confused. They didn't know what was wrong, but it didn't seem to be good news. At this time, Zhao Feng received a call from Zhang Han. After Zhang Han explained and hung up the phone, Zhao Feng hurriedly ran to the bedroom, knocked on the door, and said in a loud voice, "Master called and said that those things were fake. Can you open the door now?" He knocked on the door for a long time, but Xian never replied. Fake. The photos were real, the video was real, the voice was real, and even the location was confirmed. How could she believe it was fake? Xian wanted to convince herself that everything was fake. She wanted to trust Zhang Han, but she felt that the ruthless facts had broken her apart. Now she hated Zhang Han as much as she loved him before. Promises are lies. Xian seemed to have lost all her motivation. She just wanted to go back to Hong Kong and leave that disappointing man who was with Meng Meng. When Zhang Han learned the news from Zhao Feng, his pupils shrank and his face became serious. Photos? Previous photos? Or was I photographed in that place just now? But none of the photos would have such a serious impact. What is going on? Is there any other reason? Zhang Han was unprepared and didn't know the specific situation. All he could do was to have Zhao Feng arrange the soonest flight back to Hong Kong. He could explain it clearly as long as Xian came back. When Zhang Han got out of the car and went back to the restaurant, he was in a bad mood. When he entered the restaurant, Liang Hao and others all sensed the boss's depression. This was the fact. Looking at the others in the restaurant and then at Ziyong, Zhang Han waved and said, "We are closed tonight." "Oh, okay." Ziyong nodded and went to the door to write the news on the notice board. Liang Hao and Liang Mengkai exchanged looks and felt as if something had happened. "Brother, what's the matter? You don't seem happy. Have you been bullied?" said Zhang Li. "No, it's your sister-in-law. She seems to have misunderstood something." Zhang Han shook his head. He went to see Meng Meng, and the little girl was watching cartoons with interest. He touched Meng Meng's little head and whispered, "Meng Meng, watch TV for a while, and Dad will go upstairs to have a rest." "Okay," Meng Meng answered. Zhang Han walked to the second floor. Liang Hao and Liang Mengkai sat for a few minutes and then left. Obviously, they were unable to have dinner here tonight. During this time, Zhang Li went upstairs to talk several times, but she didn't get any news. After all, Zhang Han was not very clear about this, but he would call Zhao Feng from time to time. So he knew the news from over there. The tickets for 10 o'clock the next morning had been booked. They would arrive in Hong Kong at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon and arrive at the restaurant at 3 o'clock. In the evening, Zhang Han only cooked meals for a few people. After dinner, Zhang Li and Liu King sat for a while and left at 10 o'clock p.m. Zhang Han had been receiving the news from over there and was a little anxious. Xian shut herself up in the room alone, her eyes swollen with tears. She refused to eat or drink water, and she even threw away the Yanqing water that was given to her by Zuf. "I won't drink, I won't drink it." Looking at Zhao Feng, Leng Yi, and even Teacher Ma in the room, Xian screamed, get out, leave me alone." Swish. While everyone else hurried out, Zif thought about it and chose to stay in the room. She sat at the bedside and looked at Xian in pain, feeling that she wanted to cry as well. "What's wrong with you, Sister Yan? Don't be sad, for it will all pass, or maybe you can talk to me." Xian pursed her lips, looked at Zif, and cried out, "I shouldn't believe him, I shouldn't believe in love." A terrible day had passed. The next day, Zhang Han learned that Xian was in a better mood and had stopped crying, but she was so haggard that she became like an iceberg. However, Zhang Han still couldn't dial Xian's number, or even let Zhao Feng hand his phone to her. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Zhang Li and Liu King were watching TV with Meng Meng on the sofa. Zhang Han sat at the table by the window, looking out, as if waiting for Xian's return. Liang Hao and Liang Mengkai, who were sitting at the back table, were silent the whole time. Liang Mengkai had also learned something from Zhao Feng and found out that the relationship between the boss and his wife seemed to be in trouble. "I'll talk to him." Liang Hao thought for a moment, took out 2 cans of beer from the refrigerator, and walked over to Zhang Han. "Xian and I knew each other since childhood. In fact, she was my childhood sweetheart. If it wasn't for me, I would have pursued her." Liang Hao opened the cans and said with a smile. Zhang Han took a sip of beer, looked at him, and said nothing. Liang Hao was also stunned, realizing that he had used the wrong words. He quickly explained, "It's not that I'm sick, it's..." Liang Hao snorted and finally whispered, "Do you know martial arts?" Zhang Han nodded lightly. "You too?" Liang Hao asked. Last time, he felt that Zhang Han was a martial artist just like himself, but he was not sure because of Zhang Han's uncertain chi. "Yes." When he got a positive answer, Liang Hao smiled and said, "I missed Xian because I had been practicing martial arts and couldn't have sex before I reached a certain stage. But I don't regret it, for I know that there are many kinds of desires." While talking, he secretly looked at Zhang Li and felt that he liked her more. Xian has always been excellent since she was a child. Oh, by the way, when she was in primary school, she always had short hair and looked like a boy, Liang Hao said. "Really?" Zhang Han finally became interested in the conversation. He smiled as if he had imagined the picture of Xian's childhood. "Yes, it's still interesting to think of it now." Liang Hao began to tell Zhang Han about Xian's childhood, although he didn't know much about it. His words made Zhang Han feel much better. "I envy you so much. Although I don't know much, I know that love will inevitably have twists and turns in life, and all of these will pass. Anyway, we martial artists are not so fussy. By the way, have you heard of Master Zhang of New Moon Bay? He has devoted himself to martial arts and has once killed a master at the level of the heaven stage. Such a martial arts talent is worthy of our respect, right? In fact, Your life is too comfortable, but martial arts requires you to practice hard in a tough environment. When you reach the higher stages, you will find that most of the troubles are actually nothing." As he spoke, Liang Hao gave Zhang Han an example, but he didn't know that Zhang Han was the master Zhang that he admired. "You are right," Zhang Han replied perfunctorily as his eyes suddenly fixed on somewhere outside the restaurant. A fleet of Mercedes slowly stopped at the side of the road. While Zif got out of the driver's seat of the leading car, Xian got out from the back seat. Instead of waiting for Zhao Feng and the others, they walked straight towards the restaurant. "You are finally back." Zhang Han went out to meet her. Chapter 389, Unexpected Pleasure. When Zhang Han walked out of the restaurant, Xian's palms were trembling slightly. Zhao Feng and Leng Yi, who were following her, stopped and watched from afar. Zif had mixed feelings. Up to now, she didn't know exactly what had happened, but she knew that Sister Yan was very sad because she was hurt by this brother-in-law in front of her. "You are finally back." Zhang Han took 2 steps forward and then stopped. Through Xian's sunglasses, he could see her red and swollen eyes. How long did she cry? Zhang Han felt so sad. He stepped forward again and tried to hold Xian in his arms. But as soon as he took a step, he heard Xian's slightly flustered voice. "Don't come here." Zhang Han closed his eyes and whispered, "Shall we have a talk?" "No, I have nothing to talk about with you. Get out of the way." Xian calmed down, but her voice was still trembling. She was still emotionally unstable. "What's the matter?" Zhang Han frowned and said, "What will you hear? I'm surely going to tell you that what you saw was fake. Can you stop saying that? I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. Would you please get out of the way? Would you please let me go?" Xian shouted, her voice trembling. Zhang Han clearly saw the pain in her eyes, and could feel that she was nearly falling apart. Zif was in a dilemma, and her arm being held by Xian hurt a little. Knowing that Sister Yan was in great pain, she said, "Sister Yan, let's calm down first. Can you talk about it later?" Zhang Han stood in silence, knowing that if he forced Xian to stay, it would only make her mood more out of control. So Zhang Han quietly moved away from the road. Zif and Xian walked into the restaurant, followed by Zhang Han silently. Sister Xian, Madam Zhang Li, Liang Hao, and Xiong all said hello, but Xian went straight to the sofa, as if she hadn't seen or heard anything. Meng was watching TV there. "Mama, Mama, you are back. I missed you so much." Meng happily stretched out her little arms. "Yes, Mama is back." Seeing Meng, Xian almost cried. She bit the tip of her tongue and let herself cool down. Then she held Meng in her arms and said, "Come home with Mama." "Okay, let's go back to play." Meng was still obedient. She didn't know that she and Mama were the only ones going back at this time. When Xian walked out with Meng in her arms, she saw Liang Hao standing by. She paused and said in a low voice, "You are here, too? Well, yeah, I heard you were coming back, so I came here." Looking around, Liang Hao sensed the serious atmosphere and nodded in reply. "Then come to my house and have a talk," Xian said in a dull voice and went straight out. Seeing Xian passing by with Meng in her arms, Zhang Han wanted to stop her, but he didn't step out after all. Instead, he just stood at the round table and watched Xian leave. Liang Hao glanced at Zhang Han, shook his head slightly, and went out with Liang Mengkai. The Mercedes slowly left with Zif in the driver's seat, Xian and Liang Mengkai in the back seat, and Liang Hao in the front passenger seat. Leng Yu and the others were following in the 2 cars behind them. Zhang Han was standing in the same place, looking out of the window. Until the 3 Mercedes left his sight, he was still in a daze. Liu King behind him burst her mouth in a low mood. It was the first time that she had seen her boss look so confused and helpless. "Brother, don't be sad, it will be okay. When Sister Yan is no longer angry, you can comfort her." Zhang Li couldn't help trying to persuade Zhang Han. Zhang Han replied. However, Zhang Li could still sense his brother's depression. At this time, Zhao Feng and Ah Hu entered the restaurant. Zhao Feng was embarrassed, for he didn't know what to say or how to say it. Zhang Han has always been the anchor of all the people in this circle, therefore, when he encountered an emotional setback, no one knew how to comfort him. So the whole restaurant quieted down in this sad atmosphere. Zhao Feng. Zhang Han's sudden voice made the others nervous. Yes, boss, Zhao Feng replied seriously. Go. Zhao Feng was chilled by Zhang Han's indifferent eyes, as he heard Zhang Han's calm voice, bring Qiao here. After that, Zhang Han turned around and walked step by step to the second floor, leaving lonely back to his friends. Yes. Zhao Feng nodded in response. Instead of leaving the restaurant immediately, he stood there, silently watching Zhang Han disappear at the corner of the stairs. Tell everyone. Zhao Feng's face became serious, and his eyes were filled with rage. Clenching his fist, he said in a cold, dead voice, in an hour, find out the address of Qiao. As soon as the order was given to everyone, Zhao Feng's men all started to take action. Zhang Li, Luo King, and Zhao Feng were all on the first floor of the restaurant, and no one went to the second floor. They all knew that Zhang Han wanted to be alone at this time. After a while, Instructor Liu hurried in. By some means, he got the exact address and recent information of Qiao. She was not in Hong Kong at present. She went to Linhai for business last night and would not be back for a few days. Zhao Feng went upstairs to tell Zhang Han about it, but Zhang Han sat on the sofa in silence, as if he didn't hear it. Zhao Feng walked downstairs helplessly. Night fell. Supper. Of course there was no supper. At 9 o'clock in the evening, Zhao Feng fumbled for some porridge, put it on the tea table, and comforted Zhang Han in a low voice. However, the cold porridge was still in its original place the next morning. As for the diners who came here, it was a little uncomfortable to see the sign still showing closed. At noon, and at night. The restaurant was closed all the time, which made the eager diners suffer a lot. When they learned from the members that there was a crisis in the relationship between the boss and his wife, these anxious customers finally understood Zhang Han's behavior. But if it went on like this, the customers would go crazy. As long as they missed a meal made by Zhang Han, they would feel sick all over. How could they bear it? So a notice was issued by 10,000 people, "Come back, madam." Soon after, became popular on the internet. Even Xian saw the notice. Go back, can't go back. Xian began sobbing. Before they realized it, the restaurant had attracted more and more loyal fans. That day, when Xian left with Meng Meng, the little girl soon began to cry since she didn't see Papa in the car. But no matter how much she cried, it was useless. After accompanying Xian back to Union Garden, Liang Hao and Liang Mengkai noticed that she was too depressed, so they just sat for 10 minutes and then left. In the evening, Meng Meng was still crying for Papa. Having coaxed her daughter for a while, Xian finally lost control of her mood and ran into her bedroom, leaving Zif alone to comfort Meng Meng. When can they make up? After coaxing Meng Meng to sleep, Zif wiped the sweat on her forehead and sighed. The night went by silently. At 8 o'clock the next morning, when Zhang Han went downstairs, he was surprised to see Zhang Li and Luo King leaning on the sofa, and Zhao Feng and Xuyong sitting at the members' table. You don't have to wait here. Do whatever you have to do, Zhang Han said. We are all worried about you, Zhang Li replied. It's okay, I'll get them back, Zhang Han replied and walked directly to the door. Brother, what are you going to do? Asked Zhang Li hurriedly. Bring your sister-in-law back. He walked out of the restaurant, got in the panda car, drove very fast, and arrived at Union Garden in half an hour. After going upstairs, Zhang Han stood in front of the door and looked at the key in his hand. In the end, he chose to knock on the door. Rat-tat-tat. About 30 seconds later, Wang opened the door. But she obviously didn't welcome Zhang Han. "Here you are, Mr. Zhang." Wang Wan said hello as usual. "Yes. She doesn't want to see you, Mr. Zhang. She's in a bad mood, and you'd better wait for her to calm down. I have experience in this matter, and I will inform you when she is in a good mood. Then you can take the opportunity to coax her," Wang Wan kindly suggested. "I want to see her now." Zhang Han didn't want to wait, but he didn't force his way neither. Wang Wan hesitated and said, "I'll ask her, please wait a moment." With that, Wang Wan closed the door. This time, Zhang Han waited for 5 minutes. When the door was opened, Zif jumped out and took Zhang Han by the arm to the side of the corridor, whispering, "Brother-in-law, what happened? Sister Yan is crying again. Were you unfaithful to her? If that's the case, I can't help you. Do you think that's possible?" Zhang Han sighed and said, "If she saw something, it must be fake. But those pictures are real." "What pictures?" "I don't know. I secretly turned on Sister Yan's mobile phone, but I didn't find anything. They must have been deleted by her." Zif shook her head and said, "Sister Yan must be sad to see you again, so you'd better wait. But if you really did that, I advise you to never come again. Then, please comfort her and help me take care of them. The truth will come out soon," Zhang Han said in a muffled voice. "By the way, Meng has been crying since last night. We will go to the restaurant in the evening, so could you please prepare something for Meng and Sister Yan? She hasn't eaten anything these 2 days," said Zif. "Okay." Zhang Han nodded. "Then I'll go back." Zif left. Zhang Han stood for 5 minutes then went downstairs with a light sigh. When he got back to the restaurant, Zhang Han seemed to lose all his motivation without Meng and Ziyan. Fortunately, they would come back in the evening. After a long wait, it was 7 o'clock in the evening. Before coming, Zif sent a message to Zhang Han. So when they arrived, Zhang Han had prepared 3 dishes, 1 meat and 2 vegetables. But there were some differences between Zhang Han's imagination and the reality. While Meng went back into Zhang Han's arms happily, Ziyan didn't even spare him a glance. Ziyan chose to sit at the outside member table with Zif, Liang Hao, and his sister. Mama comes here." Meng was calling from the sofa in front of the tea table. "Have you forgotten what Mama said to you?" Ziyan looked at Meng and said. Meng's little mouth pouted up at once and she said nothing more. Zhang Han sighed, served Ziyan a meal, poured her a glass of milk, put it in front of Ziyan's table, and said softly, "Take the meal first." However, Ziyan ignored him and pushed the meal and milk aside. Gulp. Staring at the delicious food and smelling the fragrance, Liang Mengkai and Zif exchanged a yearning look. Their stomachs began to cry. They want to eat, but, in the end, they did not move the chopsticks but just endured the torture of the fragrance. "Can you talk with me upstairs? Anyway, you have to listen to me." Zhang Han forced a smile. "I don't want to say anything to you." Ziyan immediately got up to go out and quickly returned to her car. Zif, Liang Mengkai, and Liang Hao also went out. About 20 minutes later, Zif came in and took Meng away by force. The car carried them slowly away. Late at night, Zhang Han was alone in the bedroom. He looked at the empty bedroom and sighed. Zhang Han got up and left the restaurant. He walked aimlessly in the street, and finally arrived at Mount New Moon. Sitting on the tree on the edge of the cliff in the east, he heard the sea breeze gently blowing through the forest, making the leaves rustle. Under the sound of the waves, Zhang Han sat like this all night, until the rising sun lit up the world. Suddenly, Zhang Han stood up and looked at the boundless sea, his black windbreaker flying backward slightly. He moved and jumped forward. He turned over in the air, fell vertically, plopped into the sea, and only aroused a tiny bit of water. Then the water returned to its original state, and no one came up for a long time. From the perspective of onlookers, Zhang Han seemed to be committing suicide. However, in the invisible sea, a figure was swimming down to the deep sea like a fish. Zhang Han was not committing suicide. At this time, He had a small thing in his hand, which was called a water spirit stone. His skin and clothes were covered with a layer of blue light. The sea was beautiful and mysterious. So far, only a small part of the sea had been explored. In the shallow sea, there were many corals and fishes, creating a beautiful scene. But Zhang Han was not in the mood to look at them. All he wanted to do was to swim until he was exhausted. He didn't know how long he had been swimming, maybe more than 3 hours. He had reached the deep sea, and the bottom of the sea was getting dark. It was about 800 meters below the surface, and since all the sunlight couldn't pass through the water, the light here was very weak, and ordinary people would feel depressed and scared in the black and blue environment. Zhang Han activated his spiritual force and made it move around his eyes, so that he could see the scene in front of him and nearby. He floated up, rested for a moment, took out his cell phone, and found that only 30% power remained. After checking the coordinates, Zhang Han learned that he was near the Dongshaw Islands. Dongshaw Islands? After thinking for a while, Zhang Han sank into the sea again. When he reached 1,500 meters, he saw the bottom of the sea, so he continued to swim to the depths. When Zhang Han could not see clearly, he suddenly found something unusual. The vision under him was darker than the deep sea he had just passed, and it was like a huge black creature lying on the bottom of the sea. Zhang Han took out his mobile phone and turned on the flashlight. However, due to the protection of the water spirit stone barrier, the light did not spread out, so Zhang Han controlled the water spirit stone, removed the barrier at the light column of the flashlight, and the light slowly shone out. Although the distance that could be lit was limited, Zhang Han could see the scene below faintly with the light. It was a deep trench. He retreated a little, went to the edge of the trench, and swam to the side for a moment. Suddenly, from the depths of the trench, Zhang Han felt a sense of crisis. There was definitely something down there. Zhang Han looked in that direction, but he didn't go down. He knew that his current strength was not enough to support his exploration. At this time, there was not much spiritual force left in Zhang Han's body. When he was about to go back, he suddenly saw a bulge on the edge of the trench on the right side. A sunken ship. The shape was like a sunken ship. Was this the coordinates on the treasure map mentioned by Baikwan? Not necessarily. The area of the sea is too large, accounting for 70% of the earth, and this trench and sea floor were not very deep, just a small corner of the ocean. Zhang Han swam to the shadows and found that it was a sunken ship or a small cruise ship. Part of it was hanging on the edge of the trench, and the rest was on the bottom of the sea, like a shipwreck on the edge of a cliff. The ship had been totally eroded by the sea, and Zhang Han entered it through a gap in the hull. He looked around and saw a dozen dead bones. Ordinary people might have been afraid, but Zhang Han was used to it. There were 3 levels in the ship. At last, on the bottom level, Zhang Han found something. In the inner room of the 3rd floor at the bottom were lots of boxes, many of which were rotten, with a lot of gold and silver treasures visible. Hiss! Zhang Han activated his treasure-sniffing nose, and suddenly found a fragrance of spirit treasure coming from the corner on the right side of the room. He swam in that direction, opened 2 small boxes, and finally found a piece of metal the size of a palm. Wiping away the stain on the stone, he saw its red body. It turned to be a fire cloud stone. A fire cloud stone was a first-stage spirit treasure, a memory metal, which could improve the self-healing ability, quality, and connectivity with a soul sense of weapons. Though as a low-stage treasure it was not very useful, Zhang Han could use it to refine his 18 black cards. After checking the metal, Zhang Han was about to leave when he suddenly looked at the bottom of the box that he had just moved. A faint light came from the bottom of the box. Zhang Han moved the big boxes to reveal a hole with a diameter of 2 meters. Cultivator's abode? Zhang Han reached out and touched it, and found that the light wave at the hole was a defensive formation. Just a small formation with warning and camouflage functions. Zhang Han activated his spiritual force and entered the formation directly. The scene suddenly changed. Now, Zhang Han was in a stone house of about 20 square meters. There were only a table, a chair, and a cattail cushion in front of him. He found a small pile of bones on the cattail cushion. The spiritual qi here. Zhang Han felt that the spiritual qi here was extremely rich, even 100 times that of the outside world. In all corners of the stone house, there were a total of 18 traces of crystal stones. Zhang Han looked at them a few times and realized that the dead bones were from the former master of this place, who had failed to advance to the higher stages during his cultivation. I wonder what kind of cultivation method could kill him. Zhang Han shook his head slightly. There were so many cultivation methods, some of which were extremely effective, but they would bring greater danger to the advancing cultivators. There were countless cultivators who died when they were making a breakthrough and advancing to a higher stage. In addition to the rich spiritual qi and the things Zhang Han saw, there was nothing else in the stone house. Zhang Han meditated for 10 minutes until all his spiritual force was restored. Finally, he looked at the stone house, put the fire cloud stone on the table, and turned away. There was nothing special about this stone house, but the spiritual qi here could help him a lot. For example, making foundation elixir. Yuan King fruit was about to mature, and the success rate of alchemy could be increased by 30% here, which was an unexpected pleasure for Zhang Han. He left the shipwreck and swam directly up to the sea surface. After recording the coordinates, Zhang Han dived into the water again and went back to the steep cliff of Mount New Moon. It was well past 1 o'clock in the afternoon when he finally returned to the restaurant. Zhao Feng, who had been waiting in the restaurant for a long time, told Zhang Han that someone was sent to Linhai to take Qiaoluoluo back, but he never found a chance. But he got the news that Qiaoluoluo would be back tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. In the evening, Xian again came with Meng Meng, followed by Zuf, Liang Hao, and his sister. Although Xian was in a better mood this time, not so dull, she only talked with Liang Hao, who was sitting opposite her. Her attitude toward Zhang Han was even colder, and she didn't pay attention to him or eat the food he made. Zhang Han frowned all the time, for he didn't like Xian to be close to any other men. Seeing her brother's expression, Zhang Li walked angrily to Liang Hao's table. "Come out with me." Zhang Li said to Liang Hao. "Well, okay." Liang Hao smiled and nodded, but he felt that Lilai was not being very friendly. When Zhang Li was out of the restaurant and had walked 50 meters away, she stopped, turned to stare at Liang Hao, and said sourly, "Do you know Xian's identity?" "Huh?" Liang Hao was stunned. What did she mean? Wasn't Xian the girl he knew? "She is my sister-in-law, sister-in-law." Zhang Li said angrily, "Although they are quarreling now, she is still my sister-in-law, my brother's wife, and she has children. What do you want to do? Can you stop trying to attract my sister-in-law's attention? Do you know how annoying you are?" Zhang Li's words embarrassed Liang Hao. He shook his head and said, "Xian is in a bad mood. As her friend, I just want to help her and comfort her." Nobody dared to talk to Liang Hao like this before, but Zhang Li's rude warning made him feel that his was very interesting. "Maybe it's because I like her. I'm not a masochist, I'm not." Liang Hao forced a smile to himself. Hearing this, Zhang Li snorted and said, "Is it up to you? Don't be too close to my sister-in-law, or you will pay for it." After Zhang Li spoke, she turned back to the restaurant. She knew it might be rude to say that, but when she saw her brother's expression, she would do it even if she went too far. Alas! Liang Hao shook his head helplessly and followed the girl back to the restaurant. After Liang Hao sat back down, he noticed that Zhang Li kept staring at him, which deprived him of the desire to speak. Xian felt something strange and became silent as well. After Meng Meng finished eating, they sat for a few minutes and asked Zuf to leave with Meng Meng. After they left, Zhao Fen got the news mentioned by Zuf an hour later. In recent days, Hong Kitao had been negotiating with the Royal Entertainment Company, and was preparing for the final negotiation the next day. Knowing that Xian didn't want to join the Hongqing Company, Liang Hao planned to find someone to terminate Xian's contract and help her set up her own studio. so that she would have more freedom. As for Liang Hao himself, he was responsible for investments and handling a series of business matters. When the studios started to make profits, he could get dividends. In other words, he had established a company with Zhang. Zhang Han rejected the plan directly. He told Zhao Feng to prepare an anonymous bank card and deposit 300 million yuan in it. I'm Zhang's husband. She still wants to work with others? Is she kidding me? At 1:30 the next afternoon, in the conference room of the Royal Entertainment Company, an important meeting was about to be held. Chapter 390, Let's visit the Kiao family. There were 9 members of the board of directors, 8 of whom were present, sitting on the side of the conference table. The team on the other side was led by Hong Kitao, with Hong Cheng as the deputy, since they didn't want to delay any longer and all hoped to work out a result. Almost no one was absent today. At Union Garden, Liang Hao took the lead in the escalade, followed by Zhang's Mercedes and 2 Mercedes carrying Leng and others. In the passenger seat of the escalade, there was a well-dressed, middle-aged man chatting with Liang Hao. This middle-aged man was the only member of the board of directors who didn't attend today's Royal Entertainment Company's conference, and he was a good business partner of Liang Hao. Obviously, Liang Hao was going there with preparation. Because of his character, since he chose to help, Liang Hao would go all out. Inside the Hong Kong Royal Entertainment Company, there were many employees talking about the meeting. All 8 members of the board of directors and Hong Kitao, the former entertainment giant, gathered in the conference room, which showed the importance of the conference and shocked all the employees of Royal Entertainment. Boss Hong is here again. It seems that they must come to a conclusion today. Boss Hong is determined to sign Sister Yan. Yes, Sister Yan is sure to become a superstar. Well, let's talk about it later. Let's go. Upon seeing Zhou, 2 passing female employees quickly lowered their voices and left in a hurry. Zhou allowed herself a wry smile. Now she had to admit that she couldn't compare with Yan in any way. She dared not envy Yan or compare herself with her anymore, for she still remembered the last time. She had learned a lesson. As for Luz, who once delivered messages to Yan, he was very happy to see his idol's career thriving. They knew that now all entertainment companies wanted Yan. If she chose to stay with the Royal Entertainment Company, she would definitely become the #1 female star. If she left for Hong Kitao's company, she would definitely become the focus of cultivation, obtain various resources, and soon become a superstar. Sister Yan is coming, isn't that director who? He's coming along. There is a handsome man. All in the staff were discussing it. When Yan and her party came near, they stopped talking and said hello to her. Sister Yan. Director who? Sister Yan. In front of the enthusiastic crowd, Yan nodded slightly, her face pale and haggard. Because her beautiful eyes were still red and swollen, she was wearing dark sunglasses today, and the crowd couldn't see her eyes clearly. In this way, the group quickly walked to the conference room. In the conference room, the negotiation hadn't started yet. Everyone was chatting and waiting for the protagonist. Brother Hong, you are really determined to take our people away, said a member of the board of directors of the Royal Entertainment Company. Ah, Mr. Hong, it's not necessary. Yan can get the best resources here. Yes, and it's not just about money. We all have great expectations for her. Knowing that Master Zhang was Yan's backer, they wanted to maintain a good relationship with Master Zhang, so as to get a powerful helper. I don't want to embarrass you. After all, we still need to do business together. Hong Kitao shook his head and said with a smile, Yan's husband is a great benefactor of our family. I should not only repay his kindness, but also consider our relationship with Yan. So far, we have talked about almost everything, and now we want to know Yan's own opinions. No matter what she chooses, the Royal Entertainment Company will respect her idea, another board member said. They are coming. Suddenly, a board member looked at the door. They turned around and saw Director Hu leading the way in, followed by Liang Hao, Yan, and Zuf. When they came in, the four of them sat directly in the chairs to the left. Everyone looked at Xian, but she didn't take off her sunglasses, which made her look cold and detached. "Let me give you an introduction," said Director Hu, pointing to Liang Hao beside him. "This is Liang Hao, the young leader of the Liang family of Singapore. He is in charge of 3 family companies and has doubled their revenue in 2 years. Such a business genius is my partner, and he is here on behalf of Xian. You flatter me." Liang Hao stood up, smiled and said, "Hello, everyone." Then he sat down, pondered and said, "I'm here on behalf of Xian today, and what I'm going to say is what she desires. First of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Hong for his expectations of me and the Royal Entertainment Company for training me, but unfortunately, for personal reasons, we choose to terminate the contract with Royal Entertainment, and will not sign with another company for the time being." The instant he finished speaking, the expressions of the people present froze. Hong Kitao shook his head and smiled. Looking at Xian, he said casually, "Xian, have you made up your mind?" They had a good relationship with Xian, so they still wanted to know Xian's opinion on it. If she wanted to sign a contract, she could negotiate with them by herself. If she didn't want to sign it, they wouldn't force her. The directors of Royal Entertainment were helpless, for Xian had made up her mind to leave. At the same time, they felt a little pity because their attitude towards Xian before was not good. If they treated her sincerely the whole time, things would not have developed like this. Thinking of this, many directors were wondering whether Wu Chengdong was qualified for the position of president. "Yes, I have." Xian's voice, which was much lower than usual, was a little hoarse. "I want to take a rest." Then you won't come back?" asked a board member. "She will come back, but I will help her set up her own studio because I don't know how long she wants to rest," Liang Hao said frankly. After all, Xian was still working in this field, and there was no news worth hiding. Since Liang Hao felt no difficulty in this matter, he directly made this announcement. "Therefore, we are here to terminate the contract, but we are still friends. Even if Xian has her own studio in the future, we may get chances to cooperate with each other. Of course, we will give priority to her former bosses. Now you can directly talk about the cost of termination, or how much we need to pay," Liang Hao said with a smile. As soon as he finished speaking, the members of the board of directors began to discuss with each other. "Well," Director Hu coughed softly and said, "I think that we will always be friends, and we should give Xian a friendly price for the liquidated damages." "Though you have a point," Director Li shook his head and said, "Xian's value is far more than 300 million, she signed a one-stop contract, and it's a pity to let her go." Because of the approval and opposition of the members of the board of directors, after a period of negotiation, the oldest present, Director Liu, finally made a speech on behalf of the board of directors 5 minutes later. "We set the liquidated damages at 1 billion yuan, but you don't have to pay it in cash. After your studio is established, this 1 billion yuan can be our shares?" Liang Hao was a little surprised. He looked at Xian, who was silent, and finally shook his head. "I'd better pay 100 million yuan as liquidated damages because Xian's future is still unknown." Just then, the door of the conference room was flung open. Not knowing who was so impolite, the board of directors of the Royal Entertainment Company frowned unhappily. But when they saw who it was, the directors were all stunned and all of them flashed a welcoming smile. Because some people were not bound by rules. In other words, rules are meant to be broken, and it just depends on if you have the strength to break the rules. As for the newcomer, obviously, he had such strength. Zhang Han came in alone, leaving Zhao Feng and the others outside the door. Mr. Zhang, Director Liu, who was sitting on the outer side, said hello with a smile. However, Zhang Han did not pay attention to him. Everyone present was looking at Zhang Han, including Xian. The man took out a bank card from his pocket and said slowly, "This 300 million yuan is my wife's liquidated damages." Then he put the bank card on the conference table. Then he strode over to Xian and said, "Follow me." Giving Xian no chance to refuse, he directly grasped Xian's wrist and walked out. Xian wanted to withdraw her palm, but it didn't help no matter how hard she tried. Finally, she was taken out by Zhang Han. Those who stayed in the conference room stared at each other with blank faces. Isn't it too direct? He just paid the liquidated damages and left. Didn't he need to negotiate with us first? We could have given him a discount to consolidate our friendship. Zif thought it was a good chance for the two to make up, so she picked up her bag and walked to the door, saying, "I'm sorry, directors, just regard our choice as a breach of contract, just as my brother-in-law said." Breach of contract. The board members were speechless, for they couldn't believe that Zhang Han had disrupted their plans and screwed it up for all of them in this way. "Well, I don't need to talk about it, see you." Liang Hao gave them a wry smile and left the room. While walking, Liang Hao became lost in thought. According to Zhang Han's nature of paying the full amount of liquidated damages directly, if he went to do business, he would probably lose a lot. It was very courageous. Liang Hao smiled and shook his head. Because of this, Zhang Han could take away Xian, who was not in a better mood. Because of taking Xian away, Zhang Han finally got the chance to talk with her. "I hope they can make up. I haven't eaten fried rice for several days, and I really miss it." Liang Hao sighed and walked out of the conference room to meet Zhao Feng and the others. Their eyes turned to the right side of the corridor. Zhang Han took Xian to the corner. Although they couldn't see it, they all wanted to hear if there would be any surprises. "Let go of my hand." Xian was taken to the corner of the corridor by Zhang Han, who held her wrist tightly. Being blocked by Zhang Han, Xian was flustered because she didn't want to face the man. "You are hurting me." Xian leaned against the wall with grievance, disappointment, and sadness in her voice. Hearing this, Zhang Han jerked back his hands. "Xian, trust me, I also want to trust you, but I really don't want to see you now. Don't do this, okay? Let me calm myself down for a while." Xian looked at Zhang Han and sobbed. 2 lines of clear tears slowly streamed down her cheeks. Zhang Han was so sad, he reached out to wipe the tears from Xian's cheeks, but Xian stepped back. Zhang Han took a breath and said, "Give me 3 days. After that, Zhang Han turned around and left. He knew it was useless to say anything now. As soon as he left, Xian could not help squatting on the ground, her tears running down. Seeing Zhang Han coming, Zhao Feng and the others were nervous. According to his looks, it seemed that the result was not good. Hadn't they made up yet? Zhao Feng and Zif were in a complex mood. Seeing Zhang Han and Xian suffer, they also felt very uncomfortable. Fei. Zhang Han went up close and suddenly stopped. "Yes," Zif responded. "Take care of her for me." "Okay." Zif nodded her head. Then, Zhang Han walked away directly. Zif hurriedly ran to the corner of the corridor and saw Xian squatting and choking down sobs. Her face had changed slightly. She hurriedly ran up to Xian and squatted down. "Sister Yan, stop crying, let's go home." Zhang Han took the lead and walked quickly, as if he was in a hurry to do something. He was silent all the way. Zhao Feng and the others followed him silently. In the curious eyes of passers-by, they left the company. They got in the 5 Mercedes downstairs. Zhao Feng started the leading car. Zhang Han sat in the back seat and looked at the building sadly. He knew that Xian wanted to trust him. But Qiao Luo was so mean. Exactly. Qiao Luo was as mean as ever. Knowing that she could not find a breakthrough with Zhang Han, she decided to make trouble for Xian. "Well, you're indeed very scheming, I admit that. But the whole Qiao family, in my eyes, is nothing." Suddenly, Zhang Han turned his gaze. His face was indifferent, and his voice was low. "Let's go to the Qiao family." Kaboom! Zhao Feng's heart beat violently. This is awful. Every time my master shows this indifferent expression. Sigh. Zhao Feng swallowed, nodded, and replied, "Sure." After that, he started the car and drove to the Jiantang district. Zhao Feng also knew about the Qiao family. According to instructor Liu, although there were several family businesses in the Qiao family, they were not very competitive in Hong Kong, though appearing to be powerful. The Qiao family was merely a second-class family. However, whether it was a first-class or a second-class family, Zhao Feng hoped that the Qiao family could be more careful at this time. Once his master got angry, they would be in big trouble. The Qiao family had a manor near the mountain in the Jiantang district. In fact, it was a manor built with 6 villas with walls enclosed. However, since the Qiao family could build such a manor in the Jiantang district, in most people's eyes, it proved the strength of the Qiao family. Even for many people, the Qiao family was their lifelong goal. The Qiao manor was divided into an outer courtyard and inner courtyard. There were 4 main villas in the outer courtyard and some other recently built buildings. In the inner courtyard, there were 2 villas in the highest and best position. In the main hall of the inner courtyard, more than a dozen high-level members of the Qiao family were sitting together drinking tea and chatting. They would be going to a top-class party later. Just as they got up to leave, in front of the gate came 5 Mercedes. Bang, bang, bang. After a series of opening and closing sounds, Zhang Han went straight up to the gate. Zhao Feng and others were following him. On both sides of the gate stood the security guards of the manor. They were very strong and seemed to have practiced kung fu. In the early years of Hong Kong, it was chaotic. With the development of the times, many high-ranking people employed a large number of guards, as did the Qiao family. "Who are you?" "No admittance without an appointment." When they saw these 8 people, they took 2 steps forward and questioned them. At the same time, their right hands touched the electric sticks at their waists. When Zhang Han moved his eyes slightly to look at them, Zhao Feng's face slightly changed and he kicked at the security guards. Bang, bang. The 2 security guards felt an irresistible force, and then fell 5 meters away, covering their chests and abdomens, crying out. Zhang Han turned his eyes and stepped into the manor. When Zhao Feng passed by the 2, he was muttering to himself, "If it had been my master and not me, you 2 would not have been so lucky." However, after Zhao Feng and the others went in, one of the security guards took out his walkie-talkie. "Alert, something happened, someone broke into the manor." Boom. The security personnel in the outer courtyard ran forward like a stream converging into a river. But the people who arrived later took a breath in fear. They saw a cold-faced man walking forward in the middle of the road with 7 men guarding him, and many colleagues had been knocked down on both sides of the road. "Call the house manager." As Zhang Han advanced, the last group of more than 10 people kept retreating. Soon after, the house manager came running in a hurry. He took a close look at the situation and hurried up. "Zhao Feng, what do you mean to do? If it's a visit, you can contact us first. Why do you beat them?" asked the middle-aged house manager in his 40s. He knew Zhao Feng and the underworld forces in Hong Kong because he had been in the underworld before. "What do I mean to do?" Zhao Feng took 2 steps forward, pointing at the house manager's chest and scolding him. "Someone in the Qiao family angered my master. You know what I mean to do? Who is your master?" the house manager asked. "He is my master." Zhao Feng pointed to Zhang Han standing beside him and said, "You can call him by another name. Master Zhang of New Moon Bay." Kaboom! The house manager looked as if he had been struck by thunder. His countenance changed. "Zhang, Master Zhang?" It reminded him of the news not long ago. Master Zhang of New Moon Bay killed 13 people and defeated 2 Heaven Stage Masters. The news was simple, but it made the house manager sweat. Thanks to the house manager's reaction ability, he quickly arched himself and said respectfully, "Please come inside, Master Zhang. I'll inform the head of the Qiao family." However, Zhang Han just glanced at him slightly and continued to walk in. His eyes were too frightening. The house manager wiped his sweat. At first, he was angry because of Zhao Feng's provocation, but now he began to feel uneasy. He knew that the guardian of the Kiao family was just an Earth stage master. As he walked in, he dialed the family leader's phone. Master Zhang of New Moon Bay is coming. After listening to the house manager's words, the head of the Kiao family in the living room of the main house suddenly stood up and his countenance changed. What did you say? Got it. When the other family members saw the expression of the head of the family, they asked curiously, what happened? Patriarch Kiao took a deep breath, frowned, and said, Master Zhang of New Moon Bay is coming, let's go out to meet him. He didn't know the origin of Master Zhang, but the name of Master Zhang brought them a lot of pressure. Although the Kiao family was a second-class family, they were not afraid of a chi-strength master. Even if a heaven stage master came, they would not be so nervous. But it was Master Zhang. They were flustered because they knew that Master Zhang had killed 13 people and defeated 2 heaven stage masters. Besides that, he had broken more than 100 people's legs. Even having caused so much trouble, he was still safe and sound. That fact made them shiver with fear. In particular, everyone here knew that Master Zhang had another title. Protector Zhang. He caused such big trouble, but not only was he not punished, he also was promoted to be a protector. They dared not to think about what was behind it. The Kiao family was not afraid of a chi-strength master, but they were afraid of Master Zhang. Because Master Zhang was fearless, no one knew what he could do. Therefore, when Zhang Han and his men came to the gate of the main house, there were already 15 people waiting there. Under the hint of the house manager, Patriarch Kiao looked at Zhang Han and said with a smile, Master Zhang, please come inside. It's not necessary. Zhang Han stood 3 meters in front of the Kiaos and looked at them indifferently. Who is the head of your family? Feeling the pressure from Zhang Han, Patriarch Kiao's pupil shrank in fear. I am. He struggled to be calm. Who's Kiao Luo's father? Zhang Han raised another question. This made the Kiaos slightly stunned. At last, a sharp-mouthed man nodded and answered, I'm Kiao Luo's father, Kiao Hui. Master Zhang, what are you here for? Patriarch Kiao made an obeisance and asked, I just came to tell you one thing. Zhang Han stared at Patriarch Kiao and slowly said, in 3 days, call Kiao Luo to deal with the trouble she made. She's bothering me, bothering me. Zhang Han's voice became frosty, which was piercing to the bone of the Kiaos. I still have a little patience. In 3 days, deal with everything. Otherwise, there is no need for the Kiao family to exist. This is the only chance I can give you, keep it in mind. Zhang Han's hand was shaking. He was trying to suppress his anger and the desire to kill all the Kiaos. With these words, Zhang Han finally glanced at them and turned away. At this time, the minds of all the Kiaos went blank. As for Patriarch Kiao, Zhang Han's words brought out a cold sweat in him. The suffocating cold made him feel panicked and afraid. Kiao Hui. Didn't you hear him? Call your daughter back. When the aggressors returned to their cars and drove back to New Moon Bay, Zhang Han sat in the back seat with his eyes closed. If he were in the cultivation world, he would be merciless in such a bad mood, but he had been calm for a long time since he was accompanied by Meng and Xian. Now, his hidden anger was gradually being aroused, just like throwing a stone into the calm water and causing ripples. Zhang Han used to be a man who seldom showed his emotions, but once he fell in love, the wonderful love would sometimes make him feel uneasy, sweet, sometimes sad, and depressed. Even the immortals would inevitably be affected by it. When they went back to the restaurant. Now that Zhao Feng was back, Zhang Li and Luo King decided to go back and have a good rest. They were so tired these 2 days. Only Zhao Feng and Zhang Han were in the restaurant. Zhao Feng was sitting on the first floor, Zhang Han was on the second floor, and the others were in the cars outside. After sending a few messages, Zhao Feng got up and went to the second floor. Master, they will come at 6 o'clock, Zhao Feng whispered. I see, Zhang Han replied. They waited a little longer. At 5 o'clock, Zhang Han's cell phone rang. He picked up his cell phone and found that it was an unfamiliar number. "Who is it?" Zhang Han answered the phone. The first sentence of the other side made Zhang Han's eyes open wide and his breath become short. What? There seemed to be only one thing that could surprise Zhang Han. He heard Tannen on the phone. "I got some news about your parents.